Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. Now, let's start. Hey, stupid Deku still doesn't even have his quirk. The 5-year-old Katsuki Bakugo laughed as the 4 boys walked through the forest, letting small explosions crackle across his fingers as he led the way. You're so weak, Deku. That's okay, Kaken. The small, green-haired child called from the back of the group, struggling to keep up as he carried all their bug cages and nets. Izuku Midoriya just smiling. I'm sure I'll get one soon. And it'll be as cool as yours. Yeah right. Katsuki laughed. Nobody's quirk is as cool as mine. You're right. Izuku laughed. It always glows the brightest. Haha, Deku is saying weird stuff again. The other 2 boys laughed, one flapping his small wings as the other extended his fingers. You're never gonna get a quirk at this rate. I will too. Izuku said back, still smiling. It's just taking so long cause it's gonna be extra awesome. Yeah right. Hey mom, what do you think my quirk is going to be? Izuku asked as he sat at the small table in their kitchen, playing with his All Might action figure. Do you think it'll be like yours? Or Dad's? Oh, I don't know, Izuku. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 laughed as she looked at her son, his face screwed up in intense concentration. Maybe it'll be a combination of both. Maybe you could pull fire towards you. Maybe even control it. That would be cool, Izuku muttered, looking up at the woman. Hey mom, how does your quirk work? Him. Oh, you know what my quirk is, Izuku. I can pull small objects towards myself, she replied. No, I know what it is, Izuku said firmly. I want to know how it works. How? 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 blinked, turning to her son. Oh, the easiest way I can describe it is, it's like I can make a string between my hand and something. Then I can just pull it towards me. Like a string, the child muttered, pursing his lips as he held out a hand, flexing his fingers slightly, making 𝐒𝐭𝐴 chuckle as she turned back to the food she was preparing. And froze. The knife was floating. It was slowly floating through the air off the counter. Or, more accurately, it was being pulled through the air in short bursts, in exactly the same way that her quirk did. She turned back to her son, seeing him imitate the hand movements she used to help focus her quirk, his eyes wide as an excited smile spread across his lips. Mom, I have a quirk. It's just like yours. My hands are glowing just like yours. The boy shouted, losing concentration as he jumped up, the knife clattering to the floor as 𝐒𝐭𝐴 scooped him up in her arms. Yes. Yes, you do. 𝐒𝐭𝐴 sobbed, hugging her son close to her chest. You have a quirk just like mom's. Hey Kaken. How does your quirk work? 𝐒𝐭𝐴 watched as Izuku ran across the park towards his friend, Mitsuki sitting on the bench beside her. So, he got your telekinesis thing, here. The blonde woman laughed, patting 𝐒𝐿𝐴 on the shoulder. Congratulations. It'll be a hell of a lot easier for you to adjust than it's been for me. My brat has been trying to blow up everything he can get his grubby little hands on since his came in. Thank you, Mitsuki, 𝐒𝐿𝐴 sighed, watching as Izuku waved his arms around excitedly, gesturing with his hands as Katsuki scowled at him. I'm sure it 𝐻𝐻𝐿. Her words were cut off by the loud bang, a cloud of smoke erupting between the 2 boys. God damn it, Katsuki. Mitsuki yelled as she jumped to her feet, yanking a thick blanket out of her bag as she bolted towards the 2 boys. I told you to be careful with your quirk. I didn't do anything, the young blonde screeched as he sat stunned on the ground. It was Deku. His hands blew up. Like mine. What? 𝐒𝐿𝐴 gasped as she caught up, staring at her son as he curled up on the floor, clutching his hands to his stomach. The worried mother immediately fell to her knees in front of him. Izuku, sweetie. Let me see your hands. Please. I need to make sure they aren't hurt. It was too big, the boy sniffled as he let her pull his hands out, turning them palm up, gasping at the sight. Red, raw skin met her gaze, like her son had tried to hold onto a firecracker when it went off. Izuku, how? Mitsuki produced a bottle of burn cream, helping 𝐒𝐴 slather it onto his scorched palms as he whimpered, Katsuki stepping away as he stared at Izuku, a look of shock on his face. I just made the light look like 𝐭𝐿𝐴𝐼𝐻, Izuku managed between his sobs, like I did with your quirk. But it was so big. It hurts. Light. Mitsuki blinked, turning to look at her son. What light, brat? How should I know? Katsuki shouted back. The weirdo is always going on about people glowing and kept asking me how my quirk worked. Then he used it. Used it? Used what? She barked back, making the child scowl at her. My quirk. Katsuki screamed, that freak used my quirk. 𝐿𝐴𝐼𝐻, Mitsuki said slowly, shock in her eyes as she turned to the fussing woman and her son. I don't think Izuku's quirk is like yours. Hello, my name is Junko Natori. The young man introduced himself as he sat at the small desk pressed against the wall of the tiny office. Sorry about the state of things. There isn't much of a demand for what I specialize in, so I don't have the biggest office. That's quite alright, 𝐿𝐴𝐼𝐻 hummed as Izuku clutched his all-might action figure on the stool beside her, staring intently at the other man. So you're... I'm a quirk specialist, Natori said, his smile stretching a little further across his face. Well, more accurately, I'm a specialist who specializes in a specific kind of quirk. Quirks like my son's. 𝐿𝐴𝐻 nodded, like Izuku's. Yes, the man said, nodding enthusiastically, quirks that can copy other quirks. You know, some people say that they're even rarer than healing quirks. And I'd believe them. Izuku is only my third patient. And I've searched across the whole of Japan. Oh, 𝐿𝐴𝐻 hummed, slightly nervous around the stranger. It had taken the two of them over 3 hours to get to the small office, taking multiple trains and buses to finally arrive at the specialized clinic in which they now sat today. 𝐿𝐴𝐻 had no idea how they would afford the transport costs if they had to come here too often, though from what their family doctor had said, they may have to come as much as once a week. Yes. Isn't it amazing? Natori hummed as he sat back in his chair, a slightly dreamy look crossing his face. Quirks that can replicate the effects of other quirks. That can allow a person to use the power that is seen as so personal to the individual. I think it's amazing. Is that so? 𝐿𝐴𝐻 muttered, looking down. It's just, I'm worried that he'll be ostracized for not having his own quirk, the man finished, 𝐿𝐴𝐻 nodding in surprise as he gave her a solemn look. There is a risk of that. Though it's false. Your son most definitely does have his own quirk, and it is an amazing one. Weiss, but I'm still worried. And you have every right to be, the man said calmingly, patting her gently on the hand. You're his mother, it's your job to worry about him. But don't worry, we offer the absolute best quality quirk evaluation and counseling here. And, if you're willing to let me use some of the data I gather from Izuku's sessions to write some papers, we can cover the cost of the sessions. Even the transport costs. I know that this clinic is a little out of the way. Why you could? 𝐿𝐴𝐻 gasped, the man nodding happily. Of course, Natori chuckled, your son is a very rare case. We don't want to lose out on the opportunity of learning from him just because of a little thing like money. Why don't you glow? The sudden question made both of them jump as Izuku spoke, the child still staring at Natori. Mr. Yukinawa doesn't glow, but he's really old. So why don't you glow? Glow, the quirk specialist asked, smiling kindly when the boy gave a sharp nod, giving a thoughtful expression for a moment before he answered, well, that's simple. I'm quirkless. Deku, you freak. Stay away from me. 6-year-old Katsuki shouted as he ran across the playground, the other children scattering as the green-haired boy followed after him. What's wrong, Kakin? I just want to play heroes and villains with you guys. He called as the other children stared at him. Yeah, right. You just want to steal our quirks. Katsuki spat as he glared at Izuku, making sure to keep at least 2 meters away from the boy. You're a freak with a freak's quirk. I'm not. Izuku shouted back, tears beginning to run down his cheeks as he sobbed. Natori-sensei says my quirk is really cool. You're just scared of it. Kakin is being a coward. I'm not scared of you. Katsuki shrieked back, charging forward suddenly, his hands sparking as he leapt on top of Izuku. You take that back now. I'm not scared of anyone. Especially not you. The punch hit Izuku in the jaw, making his head ring as he was pushed to the ground. Katsuki sitting on top of him as he punched Izuku again and again. Izuku cowered under his arms, trying to protect his face as the blonde continued to punch at him, explosions popping in his hands as he attacked the 6-year-old. Izuku panicked, reaching out with his quirk, trying to grab at any quirk that could possibly help. But nothing was working. He couldn't focus enough to make his light look like theirs. He could hear Tsukasa-sensei and Kumo-sensei running over, the feelings of their quirks looming over the two children for a moment before Bakugo was lifted off Izuku. "Midoriya, are you okay?" Kumo-sensei, the small woman who looked remarkably like a teddy bear, asked, helping him sit up as she brushed some of the dirt off of him. "Kaken," he mumbled, blinking away his tears as he looked at the blonde that was still raging in the other teacher's arms. "Kaken is a coward. He's scared of me. I hate Kaken." "Izuku, I heard you had a fight at kindergarten," Natori-sensei hummed as they sat in his small office, the quirk specialist leafing through a few pages in the massive file he had on Izuku. "I hope you're doing okay." "Kaken is a coward," the 6-year-old huffed. "It's not fair. I just want to be his friend and he always yells at me. It's just like you said. He's scared of my quirk." "Maybe," the man hummed, "but he's also a child, just like you. Coward is a very strong word, so maybe you shouldn't use it so freely." "But you said Izuku started. "I said adults who hate you for your quirk are cowards," Natori-sensei corrected, leaning back in his chair as he inspected the green-haired child. "Izuku, there's someone I want you to meet. One of my other patients. I think the two of you might be able to become friends." Izuku played with his favorite All Might action figure in the corner of the small waiting room that was attached to Natori's office, his mother talking quietly with the quirk specialist and the secretary as they waited for someone. The young boy looked up as the door opened, a young-looking blonde woman wearing a pair of cotton gloves walking in, a small child close on her heels, hiding behind her long skirt. Izuku pursed his lips as he looked at them, concentrating for a moment as he stared. He blinked as he saw their quirks, both glowing around their hands, though the lights were different in a strange way. He could definitely tell that the two were related, both quirks feeling like they took something from whoever the two touched, but the child seemed to take something far deeper than the woman's quirk. Izuku wasn't sure how he was so certain of this, as he'd only just started learning how to use his quirk to identify different aspects of people's quirks. But he was sure. "Thank you for coming on such short notice, Minome-san," Natori said as the blonde woman walked into the waiting room, a friendly smile on her face as she greeted the specialist. "Not at all, Natori-sensei. Nito has been excited to meet this new person since you mentioned him." The woman looked around the reception area, her gaze falling on Izuku. "Is that him?" "Yes, and this is his mother," Natori said as he introduced Inko, the two women nodding politely to each other. "Inko Midoriya, it's nice to meet you," Inko said, holding out her hand. "Risa Minoma, the pleasure is all mine, Midoriya-san," the woman said, hesitating to take the hand for a moment, before shaking it. Looking behind her skirt, she smiled at the small blonde boy hiding behind her. "Come now, Nito, come out and say hello." Izuku looked up at the two women's talking, gasping when the blonde boy stepped out from behind his mother, the green-haired child jumping to his feet and running towards them. "Hi. Are you Nito? I'm Izuku," Izuku said as he rushed up, skidding to a halt when the boy shrieked in fear, shooting back behind his mother. "Stay away," he yelled. "I'll steal your quirk if you touch me." "Nito," his mother sighed as she crouched down to try comfort the boy, Izuku staring at him in shock. "That's not true, you copy quirks. You can't take them away." "Say it with me, Nito, I don't steal, I see copy." The blonde sniffed as he clung to his mother's neck. "I don't steal, I copy." Izuku stared as the tears ran down the blonde's face, muttering quietly as his mother soothed him. This boy was just like him. And just like Izuku, people probably didn't like him for his quirk. Something in Izuku snapped, a rage he didn't know he could feel boiling up inside him. "They are cowards." The shout startled the three adults and one child as they all looked at Izuku, the green-haired boy scowling slightly at Nito as the blonde sniffled. "They're all cowards. They're just scared of you cause our quirks are so cool," Izuku stated as he walked up to Nito, holding out his hand. "I can copy quirks too. They also don't like me, but that's cause they are cowards." "Izuku." 𝐒𝐭 gasped as she stepped forwards to scold her son, pausing when 𝐛Tory put a hand on her shoulder, giving the two boys an interested look. "Hold on," he whispered, "�ＮITO has a really bad complex about his quirk. That's why I wanted them to meet. This may just be what he needs." "What he needs?" 𝐒𝐭 asked as �NITO reached out, carefully taking Izuku's hand, gasping a moment later. "Yes," �NTory said as �NITO looked at his mother in awe, "a friend." "Mama," the blonde gasped, "you're glowing." "Oh, both Bakugo and Midoriya have applied to go to UA, the teacher said as the last of the forms fell to the ground. "Deku, the F do you think you're doing?" The blonde roared as he shot up from his seat, the blast from his palms scorching his desk. "I'll F kill you." "I can do what I want, Kaken," Izuku hummed, his voice dripping with sass as he leant back in his chair. He focused for a moment, reaching out with Uwasagi's telekinesis quirk, quickly knotting Bakugo's laces together before the blonde could finish getting up, sending him crashing to the floor the moment he tried to jump at the other teen, the rest of the class stifling their laughs. "Off, that looked like it hurt." "Fu, Deku." "Sorry, but insecure man-children aren't my type," Izuku shot back, grinning as he heard several loud snorts. You think that just because you can copy a bunch of useless weak quirks that you're better than me?" "Or," Izuku chuckled, holding up a hand as sparks danced across his palm, Bakugo's eyes going wide, "are you actually calling your quirk weak, Kaken? How humble of you." That broke the class, the rest of the students bursting into laughter as the blonde struggled to his feet. "Midoriya, Bakugo, enough," their teacher shouted, "and no quirks in the classroom. Either of you." "Oi, Deku UF." Izuku ducked just as the hand grabbed for his neck, spinning on his heel, and slapping a hand against both of Bakugo's cronies' chests. He winced slightly as he set off a powerful blast, knocking them both back. He coughed as the fist slammed into his stomach, a small explosion making it hit even harder as he was thrown back. "The F do you think you're doing?" Bakugo growled as he stomped forwards, glaring at Izuku as the green-haired teen rolled over, "Using my quirk like you own it." "I'm not using your quirk, Kaken," Izuku coughed, looking down at his stomach, inspecting the slight burns on his shirt. "I'm using mine to replicate yours. And I thought you were smart." "Shut the FUP." The blonde grabbed Izuku's shoulder, yanking him up as the hand slapped against the side of his face, elongated fingers wrapping entirely around Bakugo's head. "I wonder what would happen if I used your quirk right now." Izuku growled as he staggered slightly on his feet, keeping a tight grip on Bakugo even as the fingers began to shrink. "Want to find out?" "Let go of me, Deku," Bakugo growled back, a hint of fear flashing through his eyes before it was replaced by the usual anger. "You try anything, and I'll make sure you never even see UA skates." "Sure," Izuku sighed, letting go of Bakugo's head, and swiftly kicking the other teen in the ball as hard as he could, a quiet squeak escaping the blonde's lips as his eyes went wide. Izuku gave him a sardonic grin as he spun on his heel and bolted out of the alleyway. "Later, beach." "Ha ha ha ha. I can't believe you did that, Izuku," the nasally voice said from the other side of his phone, Izuku laughing along as he walked down the flood drain. You should have seen his face, �ΝITO, it looked like a Daruma. Red, round and one eye twitching. Izuku said to his best friend, grinning as he spoke, "Hey, you free to train this weekend? I'm thinking a run after our sessions with 𝐁Tory-sensei." "Of course, my friend." �ΝITO laughed, "I shall once again trounce you in our races." "Hey," Izuku chuckled, "just because you're better at sprints than I am doesn't mean anything. We both know I have more stamina. I'd be able to save more people." "Of course. I'd just get there first." "Later, you butt." Izuku laughed as he passed under a bridge. "Goodbye, you tortoise." "Hey, I'm not that SL dash." He was cut off as his best friend hung up on him, sighing as he slipped his phone into his pocket, closing his eyes for a moment. Izuku gasped, darting back as he watched the storm grate in the middle of the path. A moment later, the sludge man shot up, looking around and muttering about finding some camouflage. Izuku flinched as he heard the shout from above him, some child in the nearby park calling out, "The villain." Suddenly grinning as he headed towards the sound. Izuku gritted his teeth. "Oi!" Izuku shouted, jumping out of his hiding place. "I wouldn't if I were you." "Here," the villain said, turning to face him, Izuku grinning madly back at him. "Oh, a wannabe hero. Well, you just help me out, kid." Izuku closed his eyes as the sludge leapt at him, feeling out the quirks that had been following the man, latching onto one and jumping. He felt his body go light as he floated up and over the villain, latching onto another as he released his hold on the first. Black energy shot from his hands, wrapping around several of the trash cans under the bridge, allowing the teen to pelt the sludge with them, before he grabbed the floating quirk again just before he hit the ground. Suddenly, all 8 quirks shot up out of the swords in a single movement, Izuku's grin falling as he stared at the wide back standing in front of him. "Wait, All Might has 8 quirks," he said, just as the hero punched the slime villain to pieces. "How do you have 8 quirks?" The question left his lips before the hero could start scolding him for latching onto his leg. "And why don't you use them?" What?" All Might said, staring at the teen in surprise. "Like, the flight one, or the black energy tethers. Both of those would have been perfect for the battle you had with the Spitter Gang last week," Izuku half shouted, bowing to the hero. "I was just wondering." Kid, I only have 1 quirk," All Might said. "It's a body enhancement quirk." "That's a lie," Izuku replied, surprising both of them. "I can feel quirks." "You don't have an enhancement quirk. But you do have a stockpiling quirk. Is that how you have 8 quirks?" "By stockpiling them." Though 2 are weirdly wrapped up together, All Might watched as the teen in front of him fell into a storm of muttering, both jumping when he suddenly burst into steam. "What the hell?" Izuku asked as he stared at the deflated All Might, the man sighing as he leant back against the railing of the roof they were standing on. "What just happened to you, All Might? I didn't feel anyone use a quirk." "Damn it, you weren't supposed to see this," All Might muttered as he turned away. "Look, kid, this is meant to be a secret, so you can't go telling anyone about this, okay? Right? Can't spread the word that the symbol of peace himself turns into some Jack Skellington-looking dude," Izuku hummed as he inspected All Might's quirk, watching as it pulsed and surged inside him, each of the 6 points of the star feeding into the center, where 2 more quirks shifted and swirled in harmony, like a yin-yang symbol. "What are you doing, young man?" All Might asked as he looked back at Izuku, the teen having closed his eyes, though the pro still felt like he was being stared at. "Him. Oh. Sorry, I was just looking at your quirk." Izuku said. I can do that. It's part of my quirk. I can see and copy other people's quirks." "Oh. Quirk copying. That's quite a rare power," All Might hummed, stretching slightly as he moved away from the edge of the building. "I take it you're trying to be a hero." "Yes, sir," Izuku said, standing up straight as he grinned at the pro. "My best friend and I are both trying out for UA. We're determined to get in. And I'm sure you'll do well." All Might chuckled, unsure of why he felt so calm near this young man. "But now, I need to go turn in this criminal. Where is he?" The 2 looked down at All Might's pocket where he'd placed the bottle containing the villain, flinching when they heard the explosion. "Kaken!" The shout caught Bakugo's attention as he watched the green-haired teen bolting towards him. "You again," the slime villain shouted. "You missed your chance, kid." Izuku ran forwards, his eyes snapping shut as he reached for a quirk, any quirk that could help him. His body flickered as he darted 10 centimeters to the side, barely dodging the tentacle that slapped down beside him, leaping up as his feet hit the wall, his shoes gripping the bricks unnaturally well for 3 steps before he felt the quirk give out. Gritting his teeth, Izuku opening his eyes, jumping off the wall above the villain, copying All Might's flying quirk for a moment to keep himself in the air as he pointed his palms down. "Hey Kaken," he shouted, "duck!" The explosion slammed down on top of the villain, making the sludge shriek, the blonde being thrown out of his grasp as Izuku started to fall. Straight down onto the sludge. "I am here," the shout echoed through the alleyway as All Might appeared in his muscle form, punching the sludge away just in time to catch Izuku as he fell. "What the hell was that, kid?" Mount Lady shouted as he sat calmly to the side of the rescue services. "You weren't doing anything, so I figured I'd show you how hero work is really done," he said sassily, Mount Lady suddenly turning red as she glared at him. "Oh, and I didn't even need your quirk to do it. Are you sure being a hero is the right job for you?" "What?" the woman shrieked, Kamu was trying to calm her down. "How dare you?" What makes you think you're fit to be a hero anyway? Short-range teleportation, Izuku said, pointing to the surprised-looking woman who was standing nearby, his hand moving to a young boy, sticky feet. I can copy nearly every quirk within a 10-meter radius of myself. And I didn't need yours. What? Mount Lady said. I didn't need your quirk to save someone, Izuku repeated, a smug grin on his face, so what makes you a hero? You little punk. Mount Lady growled as she raised her hand, stopping when a large fist closed around it, making her look back at Death Arms, who just shook his head. Look kid, he said, I'll admit you did a good thing. But it was still stupid. No duh, Izuku chuckled as he got up and dusted off his breathes, that's what makes someone a hero, right? Jumping in to help someone without needing to think about it. The three heroes were left stunned as he turned and walked away, shouting out thanks to the woman and child for letting him borrow their quirks. I didn't need your help. Bakugo yelled as he stood in front of Izuku, the green-haired teen just looking at him. Izuku sighed, next time I'll wait till you're unconscious before I save you. Then I won't have to deal with your bullshit until after you wake up. Bakugo growled, fingers flexing as he brought his hands up, Izuku already copying the movement. Bakugo gave a grunt, before spinning in his heel and storming off, Izuku just giving a tired sigh as he started heading home. He was so lost in his own thoughts that he didn't notice the familiar approaching quirks. Young man. The shout made him jump as All Might shot out in front of him, the muscular man suddenly deflating in a cloud of steam. We must talk. All Might, Izuku muttered, suddenly catching himself as he hurriedly looked around the residential area they were standing in. Sir, is there something else I can call you? We don't want to attract too much attention. Oh, why yes, then call me Yagi, Toshinori Yagi, All Might replied. I just wanted to talk to you about something you said regarding my quirk. Sorry to ask, but could you sign this for me? Izuku asked as he held out a notebook, the words Quirk Analysis Volume 23 written on the front, or more accurately, could you sign it twice? Make the second one out to Nito, and write stamina is better, please. All Might blinked as he took the book and pen, covering a pair of pages in his signature before scribbling the message under one. He handed the book back, nodding as Izuku grinned to himself, before slipping the notebook back into his bag. Sorry, I just had to do that, Izuku chuckled. What about your quirk did you want to talk about? I mean, apart from the fact that it's made up of 8 different quirks. That's it exactly, All Might muttered as he sat on the park bench beside Izuku, looking around briefly before he started to explain. You see, my quirk is special. It can be transferred from one person to the next, stockpiling power and getting stronger each time. So that's the stockpiling part, Izuku muttered, his eyes closed, and then that bit is the transfer quirk. Weird. So, each of the other quirks are from someone else who's had the quirk. I suppose so, All Might muttered. Honestly, I had no idea that they were present until you told me today. That explains why you never used them, Izuku hummed as he leant back on the bench, especially the flight one, those are really useful. Flight? All Might gasped, staring at Izuku. Do you mean flight, or perhaps, float? Actually, yeah, it is more of a float quirk than a flight one, Izuku muttered as he felt out the quirk, copying it and feeling himself begin to slowly lift into the air. Yeah, definitely a floating quirk. Still useful though. So, All Might muttered as Izuku deactivated the quirk and landed back on the bench, looking at the skeletal man for a moment. Thank you, young man. I don't know why I haven't been able to use these other quirks you claim I have, but I will look into the matter. No problem. Izuku called as Toshinori Yagi got up from his seat and walked slowly away. And I promise I won't tell anyone about your other form. Izuku paused as he watched the man walk off, his head downcast as he seemed to have slipped into deep thought. Oh well, Izuku sighed, at least I got All Might's signature. And one for Nito. I hate you. Love you too, Izuku chuckled as the two teens sat in the familiar waiting room, the blonde looking down at the piece of notebook paper in his hands. It was a Sunday, the day when the two teens had met with their quirk specialist for the past 9 years, the 14-year-olds having cemented their friendship over the same time. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 grinned at Nito as the blonde slipped the paper into his bag, treating it like a sacred document. I can't believe you actually met All Might, Nito sighed, looking at 𝐒𝐿, and ended up all over the news. Really, I thought we agreed that we'd both be underground heroes. Sorry, 𝐒𝐿 laughed, got a bit carried away. But hey, showed Kaken up some more. He actually came and spouted some bull about not needing my help right after, too. That boy has some serious problems, Nito laughed, lightly elbowing 𝐒𝐿 in the side as the door to the office opened. You go first, I have some homework to catch up on. Later, Nito, try not to break anything while I'm gone. 𝐒𝐿 chuckled as he jumped to his feet, grinning to himself as his friend gave an exasperated sigh, walking into the office of the smiling Quirk specialist. No matter how many times I look at it, it really is amazing, 𝐁𝐁 muttered as he read over the notes on his clipboard. Long-range replication of any emitter or transformation-type quirks, with a current range of around 10 meters, after that the effectiveness of the copy drops exponentially, and the ability to sense quirked individuals and the nature of their quirks up to 1 kilometer away through the use of the glow. Do we really have to keep calling it that? 𝐒𝐿 flinched at the last word, letting out a tired sigh. I was a kid, I didn't know how else to describe it. I don't actually see any light, it's more of a feeling, really. Hey, don't fix what isn't broken, the older man laughed, going back to his notes, though your biggest weakness is that you need at least a base understanding of the mechanics behind the quirk in order to actually use it. These are often more esoteric than just a simple description of what the quirk does, rather being more about how the quirk feels to use. Have you been keeping up with the quirk analysis diaries I told you to keep? Only for the last 10 years, 𝐒𝐿 answered, digging around in his bag for his latest notebook, handing it to the older man, who quickly flipped through it. Amazing, you're always so detailed, 𝐁𝐁 muttered. Have you been doing the exercises I gave you? I've been working to find commonalities between similar quirks and how they work and feel, so I don't have to ask every person I meet how their quirk works. 𝐒𝐿 nodded. I actually managed to copy a couple of kids' quirks in the park the other day. One could stretch himself like RBB, the other could turn into fire. And you did that without asking about either quirk? Only by feeling, 𝐒𝐿 said proudly. Well, I saw the RBB kid stretching his face, so I kind of figured out what his quirk was from that. But I figured out the fire quirk without seeing it. Excellent! 𝐁𝐁-sensei cried as he snapped the notebook shut, giving 𝐒𝐿 a wide smile as he handed it back. Now, shall we end this here? I'm sure Nito is eager to get his session over with so the two of you can go train. Yes, 𝐁𝐁-sensei, 𝐒𝐿 said as he got up from the small stool he'd been sitting on. I just want to say, I'm proud of you too. The man grinned at the two teens as they said goodbye at the door. Over all the years I've known you, you've always done your best to keep positive and work hard, and have had a drive and ambition that I fail to see in even the most determined of people. I know the two of you are going to be trying out for the UA entrance exams, and so, I wish you the best of luck. The two teens looked at the older man in surprise, before they both smiled back. Thank you, 𝐁𝐁-sensei. We'll do our best, they said in unison, before leaving the small office. Only about 10 months left until the entrance exams, Nito hummed as they walked out of the clinic, the two looking ahead as they adjusted their gym bags on their shoulders. I wonder what the practical exam will be. Probably something combat-orientated, 𝐒𝐿 hummed in response. They're always looking for more flashy heroes nowadays. It's actually kind of a problem. I agree, which is exactly why we'll be becoming underground heroes, Nito said confidently, casting a sideways glance at 𝐒𝐿. Right? Right? 𝐒𝐿 grinned back. Underground heroes, for sure. And those villains will know exactly what hit them. Because it'll be their own quirks. Yes, Nito hummed, but that doesn't explain one thing. Oh? 𝐒𝐿 asked, looking at his friend in confusion. What? Why the hell you appeared on national television with All Might saving the butt from a villain? Nito said as he wrapped his arm around 𝐒𝐿's neck, pulling the green-haired teen down into a headlock, rubbing his hair in a noogie as 𝐒𝐿 flailed. I said I was sorry. 𝐒𝐿 shouted as his friend manhandled him, finally managing to struggle free by jabbing his fingers into Nito's sides, making the blonde squawk in pain. Really now? Ito sighed as he regained his composure, several people watching the two teens roughhousing with a mixture of mirth and concern. You always play dirty. Not like you don't, Izuku countered. Anyway, we'll have to do that if we're going to be underground pros. Right? Ito hummed as they crossed a street, looking up and grinning. Hey, race you to the station. Hey! Izuku shouted as his friend sprinted off, the green-haired teen bolting after him as the blonde vanished around the corner. But Katsuki knew he could do it. He'd been practicing for months, he was only a single step away. What's missing? He thought, what the F am I missing about this? How can I figure it out? The color green crossed his mind, the image of a certain teen flashing past him, making the blonde tense. F that. I am not asking that freak to help me with my quirk. Bakugo thought, fist slamming into the punching bag in his room. I don't give a F about what the extras say about him helping them. He's just brainwashing them. F is a thief and a fraud. Bakugo shook his head to clear his thought as he looked back down at his hands, lowering them to his sides and letting the explosions crackle across them, the force pulsing up his arms as he felt himself begin to lift off the ground. This is so ridiculous. Ito breathed as he helped Izuku lift the fridge onto the curb, placing it beside the dumpster. Why are we doing this again? Public service. Izuku huffed beside him as the two collapsed against the fridge, Izuku unhooking his bottle of water from his waist and taking a deep drink. Heroes don't just save, they're public servants, too. Right? The blonde groaned as he accepted the offered bottle, draining the last of the water. And it doesn't hurt, that it's good training. Yeah, Izuku replied as he forced himself back to his feet. Come on, we still have more work to do before we reach this week's goal. I know, Ito grinned as he grabbed Izuku's offered hand, allowing himself to be pulled up. Will be the fittest exam entrance UA has ever seen. I'm sure. Izuku laughed as the two walked back towards Dagobah Beach, almost half the trash cleared from the white sands. Katsuki scowled as he lay on his back on the floor, breathing loudly, his palms aching. The entrance exam was only 5 months away, and he had to be prepared. A wicked grin stretched across his face as he sat up, staring at his hands. He'd finally managed to do it. Sustained flight. Or at least the closest he could manage with his quirk. Let's see that quirk-stealing freak do that. The teen thought, staggering to his feet as he stretched out his arms. I'll perfect it, so he'll never have a thing hope of catching up to me. Oh, Izuku gasped as he was slammed into the ground, his breath being knocked out of him as Ito pinned him to the floor, the blonde grinning as he pushed his friend's face into the sand. Damn it, Ito, now I have sand in my mouth. Not my fault. The blonde laughed as he got off Izuku's back, helping him up as the green-haired teen brushed himself off. You shouldn't have opened your mouth. Shouldn't have opened your mouth, Izuku mimicked in an overly nasal tone, scowling at his friend as he spat the last of the sand out. You really aren't, but, you know. I learnt from the best. Ito laughed as he patted Izuku's shoulder. Anyway, back to sparring. Back to sparring. Izuku cried as he suddenly swung a haymaker at the blonde, the other teen just barely ducking under it before launching his own counterattack. The man stood on the edge of the beach, tired eyes watching the two teens fight. He had no idea why he'd agreed to come out here, other than a certain overly muscular pro had basically begged him. He scratched at his stubble as he grimaced at the clumsy movements and overly choreographed attacks of the two teens. They weren't terrible, but it was obvious that they had been learning from online videos rather than actual training. At least they weren't neglecting one of the most important tools in a hero's arsenal. If they managed to get in, he'd have to make a point of teaching them how to fight properly. Focus the blast on the palm, he thought, don't let it spread out. Make it count. Katsuki held his arms out behind him as he jumped, letting the blast echo through the abandoned factory. He grinned as the recoil shot his through the air, straight towards his target. He got closer, letting out another controlled explosion which rocketed him forwards again. Another blast, his arms aching with the effort of hours of practice, saw him barely a meter away. He swung a foot up to the ledge, just barely catching it with his heel as he pushed himself forwards with a final explosion, hissing as his shin slammed into the concrete edge. Nearly perfect, Katsuki muttered as he pulled up his breath's leg, flinching at the bruise that was already staring to form, but only nearly. I can't let him catch up. The blonde hopped off the raised platform and walked back to the spot he'd started from, assuming the same position as before. "Tomorrow," Izuku said as the two of them sat on the sand of the clean beach, staring out over the open ocean. "The entrance exam is tomorrow." "Nervous?" Nito asked as he sipped from his water bottle, "Worried you're not going to be able to find any good quirks to steal?" "Oh, shut up." Izuku laughed as he punched the blonde in the shoulder. "You know both of us will pass. We have to show the world that they are wrong about our quirks." Yeah, Nito sighed as he looked down at the empty bottle in his hands, crushing it slightly. "Hey, Izuku." "Yeah, Nito. Good luck." "Good luck to you too." Izuku grinned as he hopped to his feet, holding out a hand to help Nito up, the blonde happily accepting it. "We'll do great." "Of course we will," Nito replied. "We have access to nearly every quirk on the planet. Why wouldn't we?" Deku, the shout made both teens sigh as they turned to look at Bakugo storming up towards them. "What the F are you doing here, you quirk-stealing freak?" "Taking the UA entrance exam, Kaken," Izuku replied, stepping back as the blonde swiped to grab his collar, making Bakugo stumble slightly. "Just like you. Also, I don't steal quirks, I copy them." "You're a f***ing coward, is what you are." Bakugo spat, making Izuku snarl slightly. "Can't even use your own quirk, so you steal other people's." "Shut the hell up," the green-haired teen shouted as he darted forwards, grabbing the blonde by his collar and suddenly lifting him off the ground. Bakugo blinking in surprise at the teen's strength. "You're the f***ing coward. You've hated me for my quirk our whole lives. Just because you're scared that I'll be able to use yours better than you. Shut your f-mouth." Bakugo yelled, swinging his leg back, yelping when Izuku suddenly dropped him, his own fist raised. Izuku blinked when a hand landed heavily on his shoulder. "Izuku, let it go, he's not worth it," Nito hissed. "If you start a fight now, you'll both be barred from the exam." "Might be worth it," Izuku muttered as he looked down at the prone Bakugo, the blonde letting out a stream of curses as Izuku glared at him, "but doesn't deserve to get in." "Maybe he won't," Nito whispered as he quickly pulled Izuku away before the stunned Bakugo could get back up. "No way, Kaken has the perfect quirk for heroics," Izuku sighed, the sarcasm barely hiding his annoyance as Bakugo jumped to his feet. "Pity about his personality." "Tell me about it," Nito sighed, looking after the other blonde as he stalked past the two of them, a nasty look on his face. "It seems we have some interesting characters this year." The squeaky voice chuckled as its owner watched the camera feed of the entrance, the blonde and green-haired boy walking out of shot. "They can't hold grudges if they want to have any hope of passing," the other man grumbled. "It'd be a pity, they don't have zero potential." "Oh, lovely," Izuku sighed as he looked at Bakugo, the blonde making a point to glare at the stage, ignoring him. Obviously he'd been sat next to the angry blonde, they went to the same school after all. Izuku looked around, trying to spot Nito's relatively distinctive hair, wondering how his friend had done on the written exam. The two of them had spent the last 2 weeks studying like their lives depended on it, because they kind of did, and Izuku felt he'd done well on the test. Izuku closed his eyes for a moment, sweeping his quirk through the room. It was a hectic mixture of light and power for the teen, his mind reeling for a moment before he opened his eyes again, blinking as the sensations faded slightly. He looked in the direction he'd felt the familiar quirk, spotting his friend sitting beside a girl with red hair, the two talking, Izuku immediately recognizing Nito's boasting face. A moment later, the girl chopped him on the back of the neck, making him fall forwards as Izuku let out a chuckle. "Freak," Bakugo hissed as the teen sat beside him, the blonde shifting in his chair to be as far from Izuku as he could manage. "Don't f***ing touch me." "Oh, but I wanted a hug," Izuku laughed back, drawing a furious scowl from the other teen, who looked like he was about to try throttle Izuku if the speaker hadn't suddenly walked out on stage with a loud shout. "Can I get a good morning?" Present Mic yelled as he strode confidently on stage, a broad smile on his face, the auditorium remaining almost completely silent as he looked around. "All right, what a dignified bunch." Izuku grinned as Mic explained the exam, listening closely as the blue-haired boy stood and questioned the pro about the missing robot. It took another 10 minutes to get through the rest of the specifics of the exam, before they were dismissed, the students. filing out of the auditorium with shouts of excitement to finally get down to business. 𝐒𝐿 joined in with them as he rushed towards the changing rooms. 𝐒𝐿 stood quietly, feeling the light of each of the quirks around him as he waited for the practical portion of the exam to start. Annoyingly, he wasn't in the same venue as Bakugo, the blonde's explosion being a perfect quirk to copy for the exam. Oh well, he'd make do with what he could find here. Ignore mutation types, never been able to copy those, he thought, moving past the familiar glows. Let's see, emitter producer type, water-based. Emitter control type, water-based as well. Good combo, I'll have to hope they stick close to each other. Ooh, what's this? Haven't felt this before. Emitter alteration type, fingertip contact activation. Slight mutation, though I can still copy the effect. Feels floaty. I wonder how they're planning to get through the exam. Excuse me, a familiar stern voice suddenly said as a hand landed heavily on 𝐒𝐿's shoulder. Could you please stop muttering like that? It's disturbing the other participants. 𝐒𝐿 said as he looked at the bespectacled boy, blinking. Mutation enhancement type. Useless. What? The boy shouted as 𝐒𝐿 realized what he just said, the green-haired teen swearing loudly as the other boys started to try ranting at him. He shouted, startling everyone around him, including the blue-haired guy. Sorry, it's a quirk thing. I can sense stuff about people's quirks. I meant that your quirk was useless for me. I can't copy mutations. See copy, the boy said, staring at 𝐒𝐿 in confusion. Your quirk allows you to copy other people's quirks. Yep, 𝐒𝐿 grinned as he noticed the other people backing away from him. Of course, it's only temporary, and only emitter and transformation types. Mutation types like you are safe. The sarcasm in his voice was obvious, several of the other students giving him dirty looks as he grinned back at them. What? He chuckled, worried I'll use your quirks better than you can. Hey, several shouted, jumping when present MIC suddenly yelled out. Start! The group looked up at the hero in surprise as he looked back down at them. The hell are you waiting for? The voice hero shouted, there are no countdowns in real life. Go, go, go. 𝐒𝐿 laughed out loud as he darted between the various groups. He'd meant to stay close to the two students he'd identified earlier, but that had quickly fallen to the wayside when the actual exam started. The two had split up almost instantly, running in opposite directions as 𝐒𝐿 had chased after the boy, his production quirk more useful in the moment. Focus the water you make. Like a water jet cutter. 𝐒𝐿 yelled as he slid past the teen, surprising him as the thin stream of water shot from 𝐒𝐿's finger like a gun, slicing the robot cleanly in half. Just soaking them in water takes too much time. What the hell? The boy yelled as 𝐒𝐿 grinned at him, before his head snapped to the side, eyes focusing on a girl who seemed to have a basic telekinesis quirk. Make the objects you pick up spin. 𝐒𝐿 shouted as he lifted half a dozen small rocks, each beginning to rotate rapidly before they shot forwards, piercing through the robot's thin armor, and use some of the bits of the robots. They'll be better than just rocks. The girl just nodded, several scraps of metal beginning to float around her. 𝐒𝐿's smile only got wider as he shot off again, sliding up next to a blonde boy who was surrounded by robots, his face looking rather green. 𝐒𝐿 noted the strange belt he was wearing, wondering if it was to help with his quirk. Laser, right? He shouted, the blonde nodding as 𝐒� copied his extravagant pose. Let's do this. The two spun, stepping around each other as the twinkling beam of light shot from their stomachs, destroying the robots and the front of 𝐒�'s tracksuit jacket. Oh well, he had spares. Oh, 𝐒� groaned as he clutched his stomach a moment later. Dude, you live like this. We make a B&N team, do we not? The blonde chuckled as he clutched his own stomach, before running off, but now I must away. What? 𝐒� blinked at being blown off like that, before shaking his head and looking around for another quirk to copy. And a quirk user to help. 𝐒� grinned as he used the black-haired boy's quirk to launch himself into the air, straight at the robot that was looming over the stranger. A practiced flip saw his foot slam into the robot, before he released the kinetic blast that was a teen's quirk straight into its head, tearing it off and launching it down the street. The teen looked at him in shock as 𝐒� landed on his hands, flipping himself over easily and smiling back at him. Your quirk has great mobility, but you're not using it offensively enough, Izuku said as he grabbed the teen's arm, pulling him to his feet. Try activating it with a kick instead of just tackling stuff. Thanks, the boy said, before the two of them stumbled, the entire faux city suddenly rumbling. Oh demon, Izuku muttered as he looked at the massive robot that had just risen from the ground, destroying buildings, and crushing the street as it rolled forwards. Time to run. Oh, he paused as he turned, his eyes looking down at the head of auburn hair lying directly in the path of the massive robot, the owner trapped by the ankle. He muttered as he bolted forwards, the other boy's quirk shooting him forwards before he skidded to a halt beside the girl. How does your quirk work? What? The girl asked, clutching a hand over her mouth as she turned green. How does you quirk work? Izuku repeated slowly, preferably how does it feel to use? I can copy it and help you out. I make things float, the girl muttered from behind her hand. I just touch them and they go weightless. Right, got it. Izuku said as he slapped a hand against the pile of rubble, tossing it aside easily. It's got good conductivity, you know. Con what? The girl tried to say, going bright red as Izuku suddenly picked her up in a bridal carry, running madly toward the entrance and away from the giant robot. I'm too slow, he growled, the robot right on their tails as he sprinted, even with the currently weightless girl in his arms. He looked around, cursing the cowardice of the other examines, almost all of them too far away for him to easily grab their quirks, and those he could had nothing that felt useful. Hey, the black-haired kid shouted as he jumped towards them, Izuku's smile widening as he entered Izuku's range, grabbing the quirk and bracing for the increase in weight he was about to feel. He activated the boy's quirk, the two of them shooting forwards far faster than he'd expected, the girl in his arms still weightless even after he'd released her quirk. OSHT! Izuku shouted as he curled around the girl, the two slamming into the tarmac at speed. He let out a cry of pain as he felt the back of his tracksuit rip, the road digging into his skin as he slid across the ground. End time. Present MIC's voice shouted over the fake city, the startled students looking around as Izuku uncurled from around the girl, hissing quietly as he did so. Are you okay? She asked, sitting up on his lap as he lay on the ground, his back burning. More than okay if you stay there, he chuckled, the girl giving him a strange look, before realizing that she was straddling him. I'm so sorry, she squeaked as she shot off him, pushing down on his chest and making him gasp as his road rash was pressed into the ground. Oh no, did I hurt you? Not really, mostly my fault, he groaned as he slowly lifted himself upright, revealing the raw skin on his back. Road rash is a hell of a drag. Drag? The girl asked, looking at his weirdly again. Sorry, weird sense of humor. Izuku laughed as he felt a powerful quirk approaching them. You can blame my friend for that. Are the two of you hurt? The old woman asked, looking at Izuku's back. Oh dear, let me help you with that. The sound of a kiss echoed over the area as Izuku's back glowed green for a moment, the wounded skin healing almost instantly. Thanks, recovery girl, Izuku said as he jumped to his feet. Hey, need a hand? What? The old woman asked, looking at him skeptically. I can copy quirks, Izuku laughed. I was wondering if you wanted help healing people. No thank you, the woman sighed, giving him a look. You know, you're the second one to ask me that today. Izuku just laughed as he turned away from the woman, noticing that a good number of the other examines were looking at him strangely. What, he said, can't blame a guy for trying to get some extra credit. Of course I passed. Izuku laughed as he bit into the apple, grinning at the rest of his class as they cheered for him, Bakugo staring angrily down at his desk. Why the F are you all so happy for him? The blonde shouted. Effa didn't even get in with his own strength. Hey, Midoriya is cool, someone shouted. He helped me with my quirk. Yeah, another voice called. He helped almost all of us better out quirks. The only reason he never helped you is because you're an butt. F you. Bakugo screamed as he jumped to his feet, letting out a screech as he toppled forwards, his shoelaces tied together again. Enough. The teacher shouted over the laughing students as he walked into the classroom. Bakugo, get back up, Midoriya, stop tormenting him. How do you know it was me? The teen laughed, winking at the pigtailed girl in the front of the class, who gave him a quick smile. Usagi is the one with the telekinesis quirk. Well, of course they can't put us in the same class, Nito said as Izuku looked at his acceptance letter, the pair of them sitting at Dagobah Beach, looking out over the pristine sands. They can't allow so much excellence to accumulate in one place. Yeah, but it means one of us will have to deal with Kaken, Izuku sighed. I kind of want it to be you just so I can laugh at him for being in the second class. Hey! I'm in class B too. Don't look down on us just because we're second in the list. Nito gasped, scowling at Izuku as the green-haired teen laughed. Right, sorry Enin, Izuku said, patting his friend on the shoulder as they sat in Izuku's room. Ooh, I wish you wouldn't call me that. Nito muttered. Hey, I only do it when I'm making fun of you. And yet you call Kaken all the time. Exactly, Izuku grinned as he spoke, when am I not making fun of him? Izuku sighed as he stood in front of the massive door, knowing full well what to expect when he entered, a familiar quirk sitting in the center of the room as another hovered beside it. Kaken! Izuku shouted as he slammed open the door, surprising the entire class as they turned to look at him. Stop being a PP, it won't make yours bigger. Deku! The blonde howled as he leapt from his seat, the blue-haired boy standing beside him looking on in shock as Bakugo launched himself across the room with a burst of his quirk. I'll kill you, you freak. The hand slapped onto Bakugo's chest with force as Izuku shoved him away, the blonde shrieking as he suddenly shot backwards, flailing as he floated in the air. Thanks for the quirk, Izuku said, spinning around to face the brunette from the exam, surprising her as he smiled brightly. It's really cool. I'd love to talk more about it with you. Hopefully without you needing to sit on me this time. Your choice though. Oh, okay, she blurted, her face turning bright red as several of the class gasped, Izuku stepping out of her way and waving her into the class. Let me down, you quirk-stealing F. Bakugo screamed as he tried to right himself using his explosions, sending him spinning madly in the air. Sorry, don't know how, Izuku laughed as the rest of the class tried to hide their snickers, before turning to the brunette. Any advice? What? Oh. Place your hands together like this and think release, she said, Izuku copying her action, before Bakugo suddenly collapsed into a heap on the ground. I'm going to kill you, the blonde shouted as he scrambled to his feet. Really, Kaken? Is that all you can say? Just kill, all the time. I thought you were smart, Izuku sighed, before pointing a thumb over his shoulder at the door. Anyway, teacher's here. If you're here to socialize, then get out, the voice suddenly said, the rest of the class jumping, Izuku simply heading towards a free desk. The caterpillar made its way into the room, before shedding its sleeping bag, revealing the lanky man inside. He looked around the room for a moment, before reaching into the bag and pulling out a set of P uniforms. I am Shota Aizawa, your new homeroom teacher, he said as he tossed the packaged clothes onto his desk. Grab one of those and get changed. We're meeting out on the main field in 15 minutes. The class stared as he turned and walked away, dragging the sleeping bag behind him. Hey, you right? The redhead asked as they changed. What was up with that whole thing before, with Kaken? Actually, my name is Izuku Midoriya, Izuku said. Deku's an insult that only Kaken uses because he's scared of me. I ain't scared of you quirk-stealing F. The blonde exploded further back. I've never been scared of you. Yeah, Izuku laughed as the rest of the boys stared at them in shock. Say it all you like, people will figure you out eventually. Hey, what's he mean by quirk-stealing? A blonde asked, a black lightning bolt in his hair. He said it in class as well. Oh, I can feel and copy quirks, Izuku explained, holding out his hand as it sparked with electricity, making the blonde gasp. Any emitter or transformation quirk within 10 meters. Technically I can go further, but it gets exponentially harder to copy. Kaken is just scared that I'll be better at using his quirk than him. F you! Bakugo howled as he shot across the room, skidding to a halt as a thick arm suddenly swung up in front of him. I have kept quiet up until this point, the blue-haired teen said, glaring at Bakugo, but I cannot allow your threats any longer. Continue and I'll report you to the school. FTRYME. Bakugo spat, before grabbing his jacket and stalking out of the changing room. Hey, thanks, glasses guy, Izuku said as he patted the boy on the shoulder. And sorry again about the exam, I didn't mean to offend you. Offend? The blonde from before asked, looking between the two of them. What happened? Oh, I can't copy mutation quirks, and I may have called his quirk useless by accident. Izuku rubbed the back of his head nervously. Didn't mean it like that, but hey. It is quite all right, I understand. I am Tenya Ida. The boy introduced himself, holding out his hand rigidly. I must say, I am impressed that you deciphered the hidden rescue point system. Oh yeah, another student, his large elbows getting slightly stuck in the jacket as he pulled it on. I had no idea about that. How many points did you guys get? I only got like 12 rescue points or something. 85 rescue points, 34 villain points, Izuku said, making every head snap towards him in surprise. What? Wait, you're the guy that got first place, the redhead gasped. Dude, that's so manly. I'm 𝐒𝐻ero Kirishima, by the way. Denki Kaminari, the blonde boy laughed. Nice to meet you. Likewise, Izuku laughed as they headed out of the changing room. Except you can totally focus your electricity in just one part of your body at a time, Izuku said as they walked out onto the field, Kaminari staring at him in reverence. You don't need to go all out. I promise. Just being able to grab a person and shock them with your hand will be more than enough. Dude, I never thought of that. Thanks. I'll end up stupid so much less if I do that. The blonde laughed as their group walked out to join the rest of the class. Oh, sorry, I just wanted to talk to someone quickly before we started, Izuku said as he turned away from Kaminari, making a beeline towards the girls. Excuse, but what is your quirk? Pardon, the tall, black-haired girl said as he stood in front of her. Oh, right. Should probably introduce myself first. Izuku said, a look of realization flashing across his face as he held out a hand. Sorry, I get super excited when I sense quirks I've never seen before. I'm Izuku Midoriya, quirk, Echo. It allows me to copy emitter and transformation type quirks within a 10-meter radius of myself. Momo Yorozu, the girl said, shaking the offered hand as she looked at him. My quirk is called creation. It allows me to make any non-living material from my fatty lipids as long as I know its chemical structure. Whoa! Anything. Even organic molecules like drags. Izuku gasped. That's amazing. You must know a hell of a lot about chemistry. Organic molecules. The girl stuttered slightly, looking at him in shock. I suppose. I've never tried with organic molecules, though in theory it should work. Awesome. I'd love to see when you try. Izuku was almost vibrating with excitement as he spoke, before holding up his hand, the palm glowing as a small shiny cube emerged from the skin. And I think I'll be able to use your quirk now. Wait, use it now, the pink-skinned girl standing beside Yorozu asked. Didn't you say that you could copy quirks? Yeah, but only if I know something about them, Izuku explained, smiling brightly the whole time as he held up his arm, a thin layer of slime forming on his skin. For example, your quirk is a water-based production type, though judging by your appearance, there's more to it than that. Oh yeah, the girl laughed, I make acid. The name's Mina Ashido by the way, Midoriya. Nice to meet you, Izuku replied with a smile, his eyes closing for a moment. Though it seems you can alter the viscosity and acidity of the liquid you produce as well. That's pretty cool, a short dark-haired girl said as she stepped up, her long earlobes hanging over her shoulders. So you can copy like the general ability of a quirk, but you need to know specifics to copy it exactly. Name's Kyoko Gyro, by the way. Exactly right, Gyro-san. Izuku laughed, booping the girl on the nose, much to her surprise. Though the simpler or more familiar I am with a type of quirk, the easier it is for me to copy as well. Enough chatter, the teacher called as the last of the students joined the group. Bakugo, you got the highest villain points in the entrance exam. Use your quirk to throw this softball as far as you can. Midoriya, you know what to do by now, their new homeroom teacher said as they stood on the field, tossing the softball to the team. They'd done almost all of the other exercises by now, Izuku placing pretty decently in all of them. All that was left was the softball throw and long-distance run. Okay, Izuku said as he sauntered towards the circle. Now, whose quirk should I use? Oh, I know. Don't even think about it, Deku. Bakugo shouted as the green-haired teen lifted his shirt, his stomach glowing as a long metal tube extended from it. It took him a minute to set up, but he had a pretty good basic potato gun ready after a bit of work. He tapped the ball with his fingers, making it weightless before putting it down the tube. And for the final touch, he said, lifting a hand above his head, before swinging it down onto the end of the pipe, boom. The explosion was concentrated by the construct he'd made, shooting the ball out of the end of the makeshift cannon with massive force as it shot off into the sky. Deku! UF! Bakugo roared as he leapt forwards, suddenly dropping onto his face as his quirk refused to work. He looked up, his eyes going wide as Izuku's glowed red. "Thanks, everyone who let me use their quirks today," the green-haired teen said as he bowed theatrically, "especially you, Eraserhead." The man grunted, simply holding up his phone, Infinity Plus. "It was a logical ruse," the teacher said as he grinned, the class gasping in relief. "Thank the gods," the bald-haired boy shouted as he fell to his knees sobbing, "I thought I was out." "Obviously, it was a lie," Yorozu hummed. "There's no way that they would expel students on the first day." "I don't know," Izuku hummed to the girls. "I get the feeling we'd be better off without him. He gives me a skeezy vibe." "But you did amazingly in the softball throw, Uraraka." Izuku laughed as the 6 students walked out of the school building. "You got Infinity, didn't you?" "Yeah, but you got Infinity Plus," the brunette puffed out her cheeks as she spoke, glaring slightly at Izuku. "Only because I could use your quirk. Which is really cool, by the way. I've never found an alteration quirk that keeps working after I SWCH to another before." "Keeps working after you SWCH?" Kirishima asked as he and Kaminari messed around behind them. "What's that mean?" "Oh, usually when I SWCH quirks, the effect of the first quirk stops if it's not a producer type, but not Uraraka's." Izuku explained, the group looking at the two of them. "Maybe it means we're extra compatible." What?" the girl gasped, her face going bright pink as she hid it behind her hands, starting to float away as her quirk activated. "Wow, that was really smooth, Midori." Mina laughed as she threw her arm around his shoulders, the group watching Okako bob around like a balloon. "I wouldn't say that," Izuku shrugged, "though it interests me that you're corny." "What? How'd you?" the pink-skinned girl gasped as she jumped back, slapping her hands over her mouth as the entire group staring at him in shock. "What?" Izuku said, as he turned to look at them. "Her horns are right there. I was just wondering how they were a side effect of her quirk. Her skin and eyes are understandable, but horns. I have so many questions. Are they some kind of build-up? Will they get bigger? Are they sensitive?" "Izuku Midoriya." The shout startled the group out of their discussion, all turning to look at the posing blonde standing opposite them. "Nito Minoma!" Izuku cried out back, adopting his own pose, before walking forwards, his body held at an odd angle. "Oh, you're approaching me," the blonde said. "You're really approaching me. I can't kick your butt if I don't get closer." Izuku replied, continuing to walk. "Then get as close as you need to." Nito laughed as he walked forwards himself, the group of 1A students watching in confusion as they two stopped directly opposite each other. Then hugged, making the entire group facefault as they stared at the two. "I thought you were about to start a fight, Midoriya." Ida shouted, chopping his hands frantically through the air. "That would be strictly against the rules." "Nah, we just like to mess around." Izuku laughed as he slung an arm around Nito's shoulder. "This is my best friend and fellow copycat, Nito Minoma." "Greetings 1A students," the blonde said. "I hope Izuku hasn't done anything too terrible to you yet." "No, of course not," Ida said, stepping up as he offered a hand. "I am Tenya Ida, a pleasure to meet you." "Likewise," Nito said as he took the hand, raising an eyebrow as he did so. A mutation quirk. I didn't see your legs, so I was wondering." "What?" the stern boy asked. "Nito can copy the quirk of anyone he touches, including mutation quirks," Izuku explained with a proud grin. "He can also store up to 5 quirks at a time for around 3 minutes." "Izuku," the blonde huffed, "you can't just go giving away my secrets like that." "Oh, wow." Mina gasped, jumping forward and holding out her hand. "Do me." I want to see if you turn pink. Wait, Kaminari said from the back of the group as they chatted with the two copiers about their quirks, yet. I wonder who's going to be teaching us for foundational heroics. Kirishima asked as the class waited excitedly, will it really be All Might? Oh, definitely, Izuku said absent-mindedly, his right outside the do-dash. I am coming through the door like a normal person, the pro shouted as he slammed the door open, hanging on the doorframe as he grinned at the class. Whoa, it really is him, the class shouted, so cool. Hello students, All Might said as he walked into the room, flexing for the class before spinning around and smiling even wider. I'm sure you're all wondering what your first foundational heroics class will be. All Might watched as the class shouted and cheered, his smile unwavering as he looked across the room, locking eyes with Izuku for a moment, recognition flashing across his face. Izuku just grinned back, giving the man a thumbs up as he waited for All Might to continue. It's a battle trial. All Might shouted as he held up the card, before stepping back and slapping the wall, but first you need to look the part. The shelves slid out of the wall, each holding a numbered case as the class cheered, rushing forwards to grab their case and get changed. Young man, All Might said quietly as Izuku passed him to grab his case, I am glad to see you again. Likewise, Izuku laughed, Bakugo's head snapping around to glare at them at the words. Well now. All Might said as the class walked out of the changing rooms dressed in their costumes, proud and excited expression on their faces, they say the clothes make the man. And today, you are all heroes. All Might glanced over the costumes, inspecting a few as he did so. Several of the girls had tight form-fitting costumes, which the pro wasn't too sure about, especially Yorozu's, the costume seeming far too revealing for a young woman her age. The boys seemed far more sensible, matching their quirks and personal styles quite well. Kirishima's left most of his chest exposed, though considering his quirk, that made sense, and Bakugo's looked to be as aggressive and loud as the boy was reported to be. The one that surprisingly caught All Might's attention was probably the most unassuming. Midoriya's costume was simple, a tight short-sleeve shirt made from a resistant fabric, forest green and black highlights emphasizing his impressive physique. A pair of loose forest green cargo briefs hung on his legs, tucked into his bright red combat boots, a matching utility belt with several large pouches hanging from his waist. Honestly, he looked like he was just as ready to go out with friends for a day at the mall as he was to fight a villain. Hey 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿, are you naked? The green-haired teen suddenly asked, surprising All Might out of his inspection as he looked for the invisible girl. No, I have gloves and shoes, see, the teen said, waving her hands around as her shoes bounced across the ground. Yeah, but the rest of you is naked, Izuku said, I could grab any part of you right now. Midoriya! Ida shouted as he rushed up beside the boy, that is highly inappropriate. Except you can't see me, the girl gasped, All Might wondering if he saw a blush floating in midair for a moment. Except I can, Midoriya laughed, or I can see your quirk. And while a mutation control combo is pretty common, it's so cool that you can manipulate light like that. What? The girl asked, her gloves crossing across her chest like she was trying to hide her body. What are you talking about? Izuku held up his hand as the air around it seemed to warp, a sudden bright flash causing the group of students to blink in surprise. You can manipulate light, Izuku said as though it were obvious, didn't you know? No. That's so cool. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 shouted, waving her hands around suddenly, how'd you do it? Students! All Might shouted, startling them out of their conversations, as interesting as I'm sure this is, it is time for us to head to the test site. Once we're there, I'll explain the exercise. Yes, All Might, the class called as they followed after him. Nice costume, by the way, Izuku said to Okiko as they walked. Thanks, Okiko squeaked, blushing slightly as she pulled on the fabric. I didn't really want something so skin-tight. It's very fitting, I like it, Izuku said, giving her a bright smile, Okiko's blush deepening as she looked at him. Wow, Midori. Mina laughed as she suddenly slung an arm over his shoulder. You're a real player, aren't you? I was just saying that it matched the astronaut motif she was going for, Izuku chuckled as the pink-skinned girl poked him in the cheek, though I still had some questions for you about lubrication. Lubrication, both girls asked, their voices going high as Izuku pulled a small notepad and pencil from one of his pouches. Yeah, like how slippery you're able to make your acid, he asked, the two blushing girls letting out relieved sighs. What, did you think I was talking about something else? No. Okiko gasped, stepping back slightly as Mina just laughed. You'll be taking part in a simple test today, All Might explained, pulling out a small piece of paper and reading the rules from it, the class still buzzing with excitement. They listened as he explained the exercise, all nodding when he asked if they understood. Excellent, now we shall be selecting the groups randomly. All Might. Ida called, his hand shooting straight up. Is that advisable? Why random? Is there not a better way to choose? Well, young-eyed dash, because as heroes we will need to team up with those that we may not be familiar with, Gnorozu suddenly said, cutting the pro off as she explained. As such, it is a good test of our ability to work together with those we are unfamiliar with. Exactly, young Gnorozu, All Might said, looking at the girl in surprise. I see, I apologize for my interruption, Ida said as he bowed. Wow, he's really stiff. Uraraka laughed quietly beside Izuku as the teen grinned along. Yeah, but that's not the worst thing, Izuku replied, tapping his chin. He could do to loosen up a bit, though. Wonder if I could help with that. I know a lot of special techniques. What? Uraraka said, blushing slightly. What does that mean? Izuku looked at her innocently, apparently unaware of what he'd said, like meditation and stuff. What are you asking about? Never mind, the blushing girl said. Now, let's see the first groups. All Might shouted, pulling a pair of ball from the boxes. Teams A and H, Midoriya and Koda as the villains versus Todoroki and Ojiro as the heroes. Please make your way to the starting area. Oh, Izuku said as he looked over at the heterochromatic boy that was standing at the edge of the class. Nice. It's amazing. Izuku said as they walked through the building towards the bomb's location. Your quirk is so cool. Not only can you speak to animals, but it gives you rudimentary control over them. And you can even choose what kind of creatures to affect. That's so cool. Thank you, the large rocky-skinned boy whispered. Though we'll have some trouble if you're going to be so quiet, Izuku said, Koda apologizing immediately as the green-haired teen waved it off. Actually, never mind, I can handle it. You'll get more confident over time, I'm sure. Especially with such a cool quirk. What are you going to do? Koda asked, watching as Izuku opened a window and stuck his head out of it. Just this, Izuku grinned before he shouted, Hey, can any of you help us? The two boys looked up at the shout, Todoroki letting out a surprised grunt as Ojiro looked at him. We should probably come up with a plan, Ojiro said. No need, Todoroki muttered, I'll freeze the building before they can react. Hey, are you sure? Ojiro asked, looking at the other teen in surprise. Can't Midoriya copy your quirk? It won't matter, Todoroki growled, I'm stronger. That cheating F has a plan, Bakugo muttered as he glared at the bank of screens. If that candy cane BSter thinks he can just overpower him, he's going to lose. You are always talking about how much you hate Midoriya, Ida said beside the blonde, yet you seem to have some respect for his power. Like hell I do. Bakugo spat. The useless freak can't even do anything without stealing someone else's quirk. Still, he was able to reveal aspects of the others' quirks that they themselves did not know of, Ida continued. He seems incredibly knowledgeable about quirks in general. F him. Bakugo spat, stalking away. They're too stupid to understand their own quirks, they shouldn't be here. The class erupted in a chorus of shouts as he spoke, glaring at him as he sat on one of the chairs, eyes still glued to the screens. Ready? Izuku asked as he crouched to the ground, placing his right hand on the floor just beside the bomb. Koda nodded as the green-haired teen grinned. Begin. All Might called, Todoroki wasting no time walking up to the building and placing his right hand against the wall. The next instant, ice shot out from under his palm, coating the entirety of the building in a thick layer of frost. We've won, he said, his breath coming out in puffs of condensation as he stepped back, waiting for All Might to call the match. A full minute went by before All Might spoke again. Young Todoroki, young Ojiro, are you not planning to enter the building? The villains are still at large. Todoroki blinked in surprise, looking at the frozen structure in front of him. What? Didn't you say your range was 10 meters? Koda shivered slightly inside the dome of ice, huddling closer to Izuku as his left side shimmered with heat. Yeah, for 100% efficiency, Izuku chuckled, though I can actually copy any quirk I can sense, which is about 1 kilometer around me, though it's a lot harder to do the further away they are. That's amazing, Koda mumbled, absent-mindedly petting the animal in his hands. You don't need me at all. Of course I do. Izuku said, suddenly going serious. I can only copy from one person at a time, and not mutation quirks at all. So, we need you to handle Ojiro. But what can I do? Hey, I got you an army, Izuku said, patting the larger boy reassuringly on the shoulder. Use it. Begin. All Might shouted a moment later, making both boys tense as they heard a sound like glass tinkling all around them, the dome in which they sat growing slightly darker and colder. He did exactly as I thought he would. Izuku grinned as he stood, the flames starting to lick across his left arm. Perfect. Todoroki walked into the building, the cleats on his shoes stopping his from slipping on the thick layer of ice that coated the floor. He looked around the hallway, shivering slightly at the frigid air. How? He whispered as he stepped forward, freezing at the sound of creaking ice. What? The teen barely managed to jump back in time as the thin icicle erupted from the ground, slamming into the ceiling. He stared at the frozen lance, the ice a deep blue that was so unlike his own. He leapt to the side as another icicle shot from the wall to his left, piercing the floor where he'd just been standing, forcing him back towards the entrance. Hey Todoroki, the shout made him look up, staring at the grinning green-haired boy standing at the other end of the hallway, in a doorway that seemed to lead to a stairwell. Do you know what sublimation is? Sublima dash. The teen never got to finish his question as Izuku suddenly moved his left hand into the frigid room, a concentrated gout of flame erupting from his palm like a blowtorch. Todoroki could see the air warp at the sudden change in temperature, his eyes going wide. Ojiro looked up at the frozen building, wondering how he was supposed to do anything when the whole thing was covered in slippery ice. Todoroki had told him to wait outside while he went and finished off the villain team, though Ojiro was already having doubts about that, considering the sounds coming from the open door. A loud squeak made him blink, looking behind him. The tailed boy froze, his eyes going wide at the legion of dark furry bodies gathered behind him. They moved before he could react, surrounding him in an instant, before several darted forwards into the small space he'd been left to stand in, using their bodies to spell something out. Surrender, he read, looking at the hundreds of rats that surrounded him, all staring back at him with their tiny black eyes. He let out a tired sigh, raising his hands as he sat on the ground. Behind him, the building exploded. Shoto coughed as he was thrown back by the blast of pressure, launching him out of the building. He staggered to his feet, glaring at the doorway as steam and smoke poured from it. The figure stepped out slowly, his entire body shimmering as he moved, the steam swirling in a vortex around him. What are you doing? Shoto growled, glaring at Midoriya as he stepped out of the fog. How are you doing this? The thing about both fire and ice, Izuku said calmly, lifting his arms, the right glittering with a layer of blue frost, the left covered in a thin layer of intense flame, is that it's all about compression. Shoto had no time to react as Izuku shot forwards, surprising the other teen with his speed. Izuku's right hand swept up, in much the same motion Shoto used to make his icebergs. Shoto threw up his own arm, summoning a wall of ice between them, bracing for the sudden impact. Except that the wave of ice he had been expecting never came. Instead, a single icicle, thin and sharp, the same deep blue as the ones from inside the building, pierced straight through his wall, the tip pressing up against his throat. Shoto swallowed, a slight stab of pain and the sensation of liquid dripping down the front of his neck telling him just how sharp the tip of the icicle was. His wall shuddered, one side collapsing as Izuku just seemed to walk through it, left hand held out as it shimmered with heat. You really aren't using your quirk to the fullest, you know, Izuku hummed as he stepped forwards, nodding to something behind Shoto. I suggest surrendering now. We already have Ojiro trapped. The heterochromatic teen risked a glance behind him, eyes going wide at the sea of dark fur that surrounded his teammate, the rats not moving even after the sudden battle that was taking place mere feet away. Shoto turned back to Izuku, a fire burning in his eyes as he glared at the other teen. "No," Shoto whispered, stepping back, and bringing his right arm around to attack. The hand landed on Shoto's left shoulder, his entire body freezing up as the sudden cold shot through his like a lance. The world wobbled slightly, his eyes barely able to focus on Izuku as the teen gave him an apologetic look. And then darkness swallowed him. What the F was that, Deku? Izuku looked away from his conversation with Koda as they entered the viewing room, letting out a tired sign as Bakugo shot towards him, grabbing his collar. "I won, Kaken," Izuku replied. "What else?" "F that. You did some SAT to Candy Cane's quirk." Bakugo spat. "You aren't just stealing quirks, now you're F with them." "I'm not," Izuku grunted as he shoved the other boy off him. "Todoroki is perfectly capable of doing everything I did in that match. He just doesn't." "Yeah, but how did you do it?" Kirishima said as he ran up to them. "Your ice was all like blue and small, while Todoroki's was massive." "Oh, well, he obviously favors large flashy attacks," Izuku explained happily, pulling out his notepad and flipping to a page, "while I prefer smaller, more precise strikes." "But how did you control his quirk so well?" Yorozu asked. "You had never used it before, so you couldn't have possibly known how to do that." "Actually, it's because you and I are pretty alike, Yorozu." Izuku laughed, making the girl blush slightly. "You need to have a lot of knowledge of chemistry to use your quirk, and I need a lot of knowledge on quirks." "That still doesn't explain how you did all that," Gyro hummed as she approached them, the rest of the class close behind, "especially the thing at the end where you just touched Todoroki and he passed out." "I've copied and used a lot of quirks over the years," Izuku explained as he headed towards the seating area, "so I know how to get the most out of them. For example, there's this old woman that lives in our apartment complex. Her quirk allows her to sense water within 2 meters around her. The quirk is really sensitive, but the range is short. Can any of you guess how that would be useful for heroics?" The class looked between each other, muttering in confusion as Izuku grinned. "Finding water in the desert?" Kaminari asked, Izuku shaking his head. "The human body," Yorozu suddenly gasped, "the human body is made up of around 70% water. If she can sense the water inside a person, then she'd be able to locate them." "Almost perfect." Izuku laughed. "Except her quirk is sensitive enough to be able to literally feel how a person is moving by the water in their cells. She basically has a 360-degree view of people around herself. A perfect quirk for close combat." "Oh, wow." Kirishima gasped, looking down as he spoke. "I never would have thought of that. But then again, my quirk is super basic, so I don't have to think that much about it." "Dude!" Izuku shouted as he jumped to his feet. "Your quirk is awesome. Perfect for a hero. You get hard right. Get hard for me right now." Mina and Kaminari snorted as Izuku said that, the rest of the class stepping back in shock as Kirishima activated his quirk in surprise. "Harder. Get even harder for me." Izuku continued to shout as All Might watched in the background, sighing as half the class devolved into laughing, the other half going bright red. Yorozu looked at the grinning teen for a moment before she muttered, "He never answered the question, though." The next teams are Team D as the villains and Team G as the heroes. All Might called as he pulled out the 2 ball, "That's Bakugo and Gyro versus Ashido and Kaminari. Please move to your positions." "Hey Mina!" Izuku shouted as the 4 students headed towards the exit, making the pink-skinned girl look back at him. "Don't be afraid to go for the eyes. And Denki, electricity conducts." "Here," the girl said, blinking at him as Kaminari stared blankly for a moment, before seeming to realize something and leaning in towards Mina with a whisper. "Shut the FUP, Deku." Bakugo yelled as he slammed the door behind him. Izuku grinned as they watched the fight. Bakugo had blasted his way out of the room they were holding the bomb as soon as All Might had called the start, half disabling his own teammate as the girl clutched her ears. Izuku flinched at that, knowing how painful sensitive hearing could be. It took the blonde barely a minute to find the 2 heroes. Immediately launching into a vicious punch. Mina laughed as she spun on her acid, slipping under the punch and swinging her own, which Bakugo dodged by blasting himself backwards through the air. He immediately spun himself around with another explosion, trying to kick the girl in the face. Just as he turned, a wave of liquid splashed against his face, the blonde swearing as it began to sting his eyes, making him stumble backwards. "Gotcha!" the pink-skinned girl shouted as the blonde glared at her. "Now Kaminari." "Hey!" Bakugo growled as he felt the hand land on his shoulder, glancing back at the grinning Kaminari. "New move, taser grip, 50,000 volts," the boy shouted as his arm sparked, Bakugo crying out in pain as the electricity shot through his body. 𝐔𝐬𝐽. Bakugo managed to scream through the shock, jabbing his elbow back into Kaminari's stomach, forcing the electric teen back. He's tough," Mina muttered as she skated around the room, drawing closer to Bakugo as he seemed to shake off the effects of the shock, coming at YA. "Shut the FUP." Bakugo howled as he spun towards the sound, his eyes still watering from the acid as he prepared to unleash another explosion. "I'll kill you." Mina waved her arm, throwing out another wave of acid which Bakugo dodged, another wave splashing to the floor a moment later. "That F you think you're doing, raccoon eyes?" Bakugo taunted, a smirk on his face as the girl kept haphazardly throwing the diluted acid around the room, keeping the area around her clear of the liquid. "Combo move," she shouted back as Bakugo scowled, landing on the ground, his eyes going wide as his feet began to slip, looking down at the acid-soaked floor. "Electric acid pool. Directed shock, 500,000 volts." Kaminari shouted as Bakugo looked over to him, the yellow blonde's hands in the acid as he unleashed the attack. Sparks danced across the surface of the acid, running up Bakugo's legs a moment later, the blonde not having realized just how soaked his costume had become, the tingling off the acid barely noticeable under the adrenaline. Bakugo howled in pain, trying to swing his arms up as he fought against the shock. Suddenly, it stopped, making him stumble, his feet slipping on the acid as he began to fall. "Mina uppercut!" Ashido shouted as she skated towards him, slamming her fist into his jaw as he toppled, throwing him into the wall, where he slid down to the floor, foam pooling on his lips. "Woo! We got him. Now for Gyro," Kaminari said. "Heroes win." All Might suddenly called, "Young Gyro has withdrawn." Apparently young Bakugo injured her too greatly with his initial explosive exit. "She is on the 3rd floor with the bomb. Please help her to get to Recovery Girl." "Odin, I hope she's okay," Kaminari said as the two looked at each other. "Dude, your idea about regulating the amount of voltage I use was awesome, though I can't really do it too well just yet." Kaminari laughed as he sat beside Izuku, the two talking about his match. "Thanks for that." "No problem, my man." Izuku laughed as he scribbled in his notebook, "I live to help people." "Hey Midori, how come you didn't give the other teams advice like you did for us?" Mina asked as she sat on his other side, placing an elbow on his shoulder, and leaning over to look into his notebook. "Isn't that kind of unfair?" "Yeah, but I wanted to see Kaken put in his place." "Nice punch, by the way," Izuku hummed as he continued to write. "I just hope Gyro is okay. That was a big blast Kaken used to start moving. It must have hurt." "Oof, yeah," Mina sighed, looking up at the screens as the final two teams prepared. "Hey, what do you think of this match?" Soto growled as he clashed with Dark Shadow, having just downed as much sugar as he could handle, wrestling with the shadow entity as it tried to force past him. "Young 𝐔𝐸𝐽 has been captured." All Might shouted through the earpieces, Tokoyami glancing to the side to see his partner wrapped in Asui's tongue, the capture tape clear on the invisible girl. That moment of distraction was all Soto needed to yank hard of Dark Shadow, throwing the raven-headed boy off balance, before slamming him through an entire room, knocking him out as he slammed into the outer wall of the building. "Hero team has been incapacitated." All Might called, "Villain team wins." Shoji and Yorozu blinked as the laser blasted through the wall beside the heavily reinforced door, the weak plasterboard shattering a moment later as Aomar and Zero burst through the wall, taking the villain team by surprise. Zero shot out a stream of tape from each elbow as the two villains tried to recover from the sudden attack, still partially blinded by the bright laser, wrapping them both up in an instant. "Heroes win." All Might called as 𝐴MR touched the bomb with an extravagant pose. This should be good, Izuku muttered as he scribbled in his notebook, eyes darting back and forth between it and the screens as they watched the villains set up. Tenya has speed, but Mineta can counter it with his quirk, and Okiko can disable an opponent with a single touch, but Kirishima is super durable, so it may just make him into a ballistic weapon. Cool, so who do you think will win? Zero asked as he walked over to the three. Villains, probably, Izuku shrugged, but I may be biased. Oh. Mina smirked, and why's that? No reason, Izuku chuckled as he shrugged, nothing to do with a certain creep, I assure you. Damn it, why'd I have to get paired up with a dude bro? Mineta whined, I wanted to be with one of the chicks. What? Why does that matter? The red-headed teen asked, looking at Mineta in confusion. Did you even see their costumes? Mineta sighed dreamily, wiping the drool off his lip, they were so hot. Really? Kirishima asked, I thought they were pretty manly. Though maybe Orozu's is a bit revealing. That's the best part. Mineta cried, throwing his arms up in frustration, are you even a real man? Are you gay or something? Dude. That's super unmanly. Kirishima shouted as he looked down at his partner, and so what if I am? It doesn't change anything. Oh gods, Mineta muttered, not only am I forced to pair with a musclehead, but he's a FG as well. The hardened punch slammed into the back of Mineta's head a moment later, knocking the teen out almost instantly. All Might flinched as he listened to Mineta's words, about to reprimand the teen before Kirishima suddenly attacked him, knocking him out in a single punch. Figured, he heard Izuku say with a satisfied hum, he totally deserved that. Hey. Kaminari said, what do you mean? Do you know what he said? Yeah, I can sort of read lips, Izuku replied, drawing an impressed look from several of the class. He said something bigoted. Kirishima obviously didn't like it. Oh, Mina muttered, looking away, yeah, curious, he doesn't like it when people say stuff like that. Both heroes have withdrawn, All Might suddenly said as the class turned to look at the screens, watching as Kirishima stomped angrily away from the unconscious Mineta. Villains win. What about Mineta? Yorozu asked, I understand that UA has a zero-tolerance policy towards discrimination. If what Midoriya said is true, then dash. I will inform Aizawa and have him talk to young Mineta when he wakes up. All Might cut her off, but for now, all of you go change. Shoto woke up slowly. His entire body ached as he tried to move, a pile of heat packs pinning him to the bed he was lying in. He looked around, grimacing when he realized that he was in the nurse's office. How had he lost? How had he lost so easily? He knew exactly how his quirk worked, what it was capable of, yet Midoriya had done things with it that Shoto had never dreamed possible. And he had used fire. He had used that person's fire. Though did it count? Midoriya's quirk copied other quirks, so did that mean that Midoriya's fire was really the same as his? The other teen also didn't have a vow like Shoto, so maybe it wasn't so bad. The youngest Todoroki stared at the ceiling, a growing feeling of unease building in his chest as he thought this over. What's it like having All Might as a teacher? The reporter asked as she shoved the microphone into Izuku's face, the teen simply staring at her blank-eyed as he reached into his pocket. The reporters that had gathered around the UA gate all watched as he pulled out a small plastic object, showing it to the camera for a moment. It was one of those alarms you attach to young children for them to pull when strangers approach them, this one designed to look like a neon green rabbit. Izuku carefully took the pull cord in his fingers, and yanked on it, the shrill sound of the alarm startling the reporters as they stepped back. Stranger danger, he shouted as he tossed the screeching object to the woman who'd approached him, before darting through the entrance. The woman shouted as she tried to follow him, the UA barrier shooting up just before she stepped through the gate. Hey, Mr. Gate Guard, Izuku said to the man sitting in the small booth just behind the gate, just an FYI, but there's someone with a quirk that can rot things. I think. On the other side of the gate. I didn't get a good look at them though. What? Oh, okay, the portly man said in surprise, looking at the teen like he had two heads. I'll report that. We'll be voting for class representative today. The tired-looking man that was Shota Aizawa said as he pulled up his sleeping bag, "Wake me when you come to a decision. I suggest a democratic vote." Ida shouted over the cacophony of voices as the class began trying to plead their cases. "Ooh, good idea," Uraraka said, Izuku nodding as well. The class quietened down as Ida moved around the room, gathering their slips of paper, before moving to the board and writing out each of the 19 students' names. "I'll make a tally mark beside your name for each vote you receive," the stern teen said, opening the first slip of paper. The class watched in silence as he reached out and made a mark beside one of the names. Then made another beside the same name. And then again. After a full minute of marking only one name, the class actually cheered when he finally marked someone else's name, and then again when he marked 2 other names, before placing a final mark on the first again. "Well," Ida hummed, looking at the board, "it seems almost unanimous." The class stared at the information on the board. Tenure Ida, 2 votes Momo Yorozu, 2 votes Katsuki Bakugo, 1 vote Izuku Midoriya, 15 votes Oh, the green-haired teen said as he looked at the board. "Wow." "Yes," Ida said as he waved Izuku up to the front, "you are most certainly the best person for the job. Though I will not lie, I had hoped to secure it myself." "I figured," Izuku laughed as he stood behind the podium, shaking Ida's hand, "that's why I voted for you. Though it does mean you and your Momo get to be vice reps, I look forward to working with the 2 of you." Likewise, the stern boy nodded. "Wait, I'm also a vice representative," the obsidian-haired girl blinked as she looked at Izuku in shock. "Shouldn't we have a deciding vote between Ida-kun and myself?" "We already did." Izuku grinned as he grabbed her hands, holding them gently as she blushed at the sudden contact. "And I decided that you're both my vice reps. More fun for me." "F fun," Momo squeaked as the green-haired boy released her hands, immediately spinning on his heel to face the class. First order of business. Building a cage around Mineta's desk so he can't harass the girls. "Hey! I already got a warning from Aizawa-sensei. Isn't that enough?" "Never!" Izuku shouted. "Okay," the green-haired teen said as he sat across from the invisible girl, "so it's like grabbing the air, but not moving your hand or actually trying to grab the air. What does that even mean?" Gyro sighed from beside Kaminari, the blonde fighting with Zero as they tried to steal each other's lunch, blinking when the air around Hagikia's hands suddenly warped. "What?" "Midoriya's instructions make a weird kind of sense," the girl shrugged, the shoulders of her empty uniform bobbing up and down, before lifting her chopsticks to her mouth, pausing just before they reached where her lips would be. Midoriya, why are you staring at me like that?" "I'm interested to see if things disappear when they go inside you," the teen answered plainly, eyes still locked onto her food. Ida choked on his meal as he started chopping his arms at the teen, Kirishima patting him on the back as Uraraka handed him a glass of water. Mina and Zero just chuckled as they watched this happen, the pink-skinned waggling her eyebrows at Izuku. Izuku didn't look away as he just watched Toru intently, the invisible girl shifting slightly. "Yeah, they do," she said. Can you stop staring like that? I'm not used to people looking at me so hard." "Oh, sorry," Izuku laughed, sitting back in the chair. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Though I guess I can see you better than anyone else, right?" "Midori," Mina grinned as she poked his leg with her foot, smooth as ever. "Here." "What are you talking about?" he started, a grin on his face before getting cut off as the alarm began blaring. "What's going on?" Ida managed to say as he grabbed a passing third year, the teen looking panicked. "It's a level 3 alarm," the student said. "It means someone's infiltrated the grounds. It's never happened before. Let's move." Izuku said, the table rising as one. "Hold on to each other and try to get to the edge, otherwise we'll be separated and crushed." They pushed into the crowd, each of them gripping onto another's uniform as they were pushed and pulled by the surging of the crowd. Izuku guided them through the mass of people until the whole group managed to make it to the windows close to the door, Ida glancing outside. "What?" he gasped. "But it's just the media." "Really?" Izuku asked, looking out the window and scowling. We need to tell these guys, so they'll stop panicking." "But how?" Ida asked, looking at the now grinning teen. "Think fast, Vice Rep," Izuku chuckled as he reached out and touched Ida's chest, the teen feeling his gravity vanish from him before Izuku grabbed his shirt and threw him up over the crowd. "Calm down," Ida shouted as he launched himself with his quirk, startling the crowd as he embedded himself in the wall above the exit. "It's just the media. You're UA students, you should be able to remain calm." The crowd shuffled slightly, before starting to move more calmly out of the cafeteria, Kirishima and Zero pulling Ida down off the wall as their group passed. "Nice one, Vice Rep." Izuku laughed as he patted Ida on the back, the boy giving a slightly smug smile as they headed towards the gathering area. "Seems I chose well." "And who reported it?" Higari Maijima asked the gate guard as he inspected the pile of rust that had been their gate. "Oh, the guard stammered. "A boy, young, a first year, I think. Green hair, said that he felt. Yeah, felt someone on the other side of the gate." Netsu hummed beside the support course teacher. "Sounds like one of our hero course students. Why didn't you take more notice of this?" I just thought he was messing with me, sir," the guard said shakily. "I didn't think dash." "No, you most certainly did not," Netsu hummed. "Paoloda, how long until we can get another gate?" "Few hours," the man said. "I have spares ready and waiting to go, but the mechanism will need to be fixed. Some of the internals were damaged." "Do it," Netsu said as he turned away, the guard looking at the Chimera's back nervously. "I am going to go sue some news agencies." "Izuku," the shout made the class jump as the door was slammed open, an irate-looking blonde walking into their class. "What's this I hear about you being one as student representative?" "Hey Nito," the green-haired teen chuckled. "Yeah, I got voted in." "You idiot." Nito sighed, slamming a hand onto Izuku's desk. "What part of Underground Hero is so difficult for you to understand? The world will know about you and your quirk by the end of the week if you keep this up." "And?" Izuku shrugged. "Not like they can do anything about it." Why do I bother?" Nito sighed as he turned away, throwing his arms up in exasperation. "Whatever, just try not to do anything so rash in the future." "No promises," Izuku called as the blonde walked out of the class, closing the door behind him. "What was that about?" MIC asked as he stood at the board, halfway through writing out something in English. "Enin was worried about me," Izuku chuckled as the man stared at the door in mild shock. "Take your costumes, or don't," Aizawa yawned. "This is a good opportunity to see if you need to change anything about them." "Woo! I wonder where we'll be going." Mina cried as she grabbed her costume case, turning to grin at Izuku. "Don't know," Izuku shrugged, "but it should be cool if we're doing rescue training." "Yeah," the excitable girl shouted as the class filed out of the room. "Cool, so the bus doesn't have regular seating," Izuku called, "so I guess you can just sit wherever you like." "My seating plan," Ida sighed as he drooped beside Izuku, the green-haired teen just laughing as he patted the boy on the back. The two waited for the rest of the class to get on before walking on themselves, both sitting on the empty seats left for them in the middle of the bus. The class talked energetically as the bus started. "So, you said you can copy quirks?" the frog-like girl asked as the bus headed towards the location of their next Hero Studies practical, Aizawa asleep in his sleeping bag on the front seat. "Yep, any quirk within my range, which is about 10 meters at 100% efficiency," Izuku grinned as he explained his quirk, "though I can't copy mutant-type quirks. And I can only use one quirk at a time." "Still, that's very impressive," Ida said. "Effa can't even use his own quirk. Has to steal others to be useful." Bakugo growled from the back of the bus, Izuku just grinning as the other students called him out on his words. "Dude, we get it," Kaminari laughed. "Your personality is a flaming dumpster full of SHT, you don't need to keep posturing." "I'm what?" the blonde exploded. "I'll kill you." "Don't worry, he's always been like this," Izuku chuckled as the rest of the class leaned away from the screaming blonde. "He's scared I'll be better at using his quirk than him." "F you. I'm not scared OFSE. Then why do you hate me using your quirk so much?" Izuku asked, the blonde going silent as he sat back down, a scowl on his face. "Exactly. So, you two are what?" Mina asked as she leaned forwards. "Childhood friends. Enemies. Kaken tries to bully me," Izuku said, the others all looking at the scowling blonde, but he doesn't succeed very much. Screw you. Bakugo growled, I'll kick your butt. How many times do I need to tell you, Kaken? Izuku sighed, emotionally unstable man-children aren't my type. So, then what is your type? Mina asked, cutting off Bakugo's angry shout. Hey. Izuku said, looking at her, oh. Nice personality, good-looking and with a cool quirk, I guess. I'm not too picky. Wow, pretty vague, Gyro hummed. I guess, Izuku laughed, especially since it basically describes the whole class. Bar Kaken. The bus fell silent for a moment as the other students stared at him in surprise. What? He asked, a slight smile on his face. Was it something I said? Real smooth, Midori. Mina chuckled under her breath, real smooth. Hello and welcome to the unforeseen simulation joint. 13 said as they walked out in front of the class, or USJ for short. Ooh, Izuku hummed, flexing his finger as it darkened, the air around it suddenly stinging with a whistling noise that made the rescue hero jump, so it's a mix between a transformation and production type quirk. Cool. Young man. What did you just do? The spacesuit-wearing hero gasped as they ran up to him. Wait, green hair. You're Izuku Midoriya, aren't you? The principal warned me you could copy quirks. Oh, yeah, Izuku chuckled nervously. Sorry, I have a habit of trying to replicate any interesting quirks I come across. Don't, Aizawa growled as he stalked up behind the teen, grabbing his shoulder. Some people's quirks can be very dangerous if you don't know how to use them properly. Exactly. 13 said as they stepped back. As I'm sure you all know, I am the rescue hero 13, and I use my quirk, Black Hole, to help clear rubble and debris from disaster sites. However, my quirk can also be used to very easily kill. The excited chattering of the class suddenly quietened down as 13 looked towards Izuku. So, it is very important that you remember that quirks are dangerous. I'm sorry, Sensei, Izuku said, I won't do it again. Very well, 13 sighed, let's head inside. The class filed into the USJ, listening as 13 explained the building and its various zones. Izuku was listening intently, scribbling in his notepad when he felt the flash down below them, his head snapping up. A wave of nausea washed over him as he felt the quirk grow stronger, and how wrong it was. Sensei, Izuku gasped as he grabbed the man's arm, pointing down into the plaza, someone's using a quirk down there. What? Aizawa sighed, looking in the same direction as the teen. What are you talk dash? The purple cloud expanded, a hand reaching out of it a moment later as a head of pale hair poked out, a severed hand covering the villain's face as he stepped through. The mist expanded further, more figures stepping through as they seemed to joke and laugh with each other, cruel grins on their faces. Who are those people? Kirishima asked, is this part of the exercise? No, Aizawa growled, hand already on his capture weapon as he used the other to steady the wobbling Izuku. Those are real villains. 13. Protect the students. Izuku choked as the creature walked out through the portal. He'd felt many types of quirks over the years, but nothing like those two things. While All Might's multiple quirks had all been in balance, forming a star-like structure within him, theirs were a mess of twisted and torn light. The portal user only had 3, some kind of production control quirk as a base, a portal quirk and a mutation that made his body like gas. The other monster. That thing is dangerous, he gasped, looking at Aizawa as the man prepared to jump down. Powerful regeneration, shock absorption, and multiple super strengths, at least. It won't mean anything when I erase his quirk, Eraserhead muttered as he threw himself down the stairs. It's the right time, the pale-haired villain growled, his voice dry and cold. So where is All Might? Perhaps there was a change in schedule, a voice said, a pair of glowing yellow eyes emerging from the dark cloud, though it shouldn't be hard to get him to appear. Right, the pale-haired man grumbled. Krogiri, you have a job to do. Go do it. Izuku blinked, spinning as he felt the portal villain appear behind him. The mist man shouted in surprise as he fell out of the air, his quirk erased, Izuku's eyes glowing red. Grab him now, the green-haired teen shouted as he felt Aizawa reach the edge of his range, quickly. Gotcha. Bakugo yelled as he leapt onto the man, Izuku blinking as he felt his hold on Aizawa's quirk rapidly diminish, the villain's body writhing under the blonde teen, F to Y anything and I'll blow you to hell. Everyone! Get out! 13 shouted as they pointed at the door, the other students running towards it. Sensei! Izuku shouted as he turned to watch Aizawa decimating the villains below. Aizawa-sensei needs help. No! 13 shouted, grabbing him by the shoulder, absolutely not. Enough! The portal villain roared, dark tendrils suddenly erupting from his body as they engulfed Bakugo, the blonde crying out in surprise before he vanished, "We are the League of Villains, and we have come to kill All Might." "Where is he?" "Kill All Might." Asui muttered, "How are you going to do that?" "None of your concern, young heroes," the man huffed as he spread his body out again, the dark mist moving to surround the students. "For now, all you need to do is scatter. And die. I won't let you." 13 shouted, holding up their hand. "Sensei! No!" Izuku screamed, his own hands shooting up as the clouds erupted from his palms. "He could redirect your attack." The green-tinged clouds slammed into the portal user just as 13 opened their glove, the powerful suction pulling in several of the clouds as the portal user was forced back, a look of surprise on his face. The clouds twisted, wrapping around the mist villain, pinning him in place as Izuku struggled to keep control of the quirk. "What?" Uraraka called, looking at Izuku in surprise. "Where'd you get that quirk?" "Doesn't matter," Izuku growled, his head spinning as he clenched his hands. "Get out." "Midoriya!" 13 shouted, reaching for the boy as BLD began to drip from his nose. "Come on. You have to leave as well." "I have to hold him." Izuku gasped, another wave of nausea washing through him, his hold on the shredded quirk slipping just a little too much. "Enough!" The mist villain roared, his body exploding out of the clouds, the dark mist washing over the students as they screamed in fear. "I said scatter and die." Izuku froze. The feeling of his classmates' quirks vanished as the mist engulfed him, surrounding him with only the sickening sensation of the torn and twisted quirks of the villain. His stomach churned as his head spun, the teen choking as he felt his lunch force its way into his throat as the wrongness of the quirk clawed at his skin. And then suddenly the clawing sensation was gone, only to be replaced with a sense of disorientation as Izuku's quirk registered the dozens of unfamiliar quirks around him. "Here. White Krogiri, send this one here." The dry voice growled, making Izuku look up at the pale-haired villain. And the monster behind him. Izuku threw up, his lunch splattering to the concrete below him. The twisting mass of quirks inside the beast was too much, his head aching as he shuddered and sobbed on his hands and knees. "Just a scared brat," the villain chuckled, reaching for the teen. "Whatever, I'll just kill him now." "You're the one from the gate," he managed to sputter, the villain pausing for a moment. "Oh. And how do you know that?" I can feel your quirk," Izuku gasped. 5-point contact, alteration emitter type, it rots things when you touch them." "Oh," the man cackled, "is that your quirk? Being able to tell what other quirks can do? How interesting. I'm sure Sensei would love to meet you." "Sensei." Izuku gasped. "Midoriya," the shout made the two freeze, both looking up as Aizawa darted forwards, slamming two of the lesser villains into each other with his capture weapon as he charged. "Get out of here. Now." "Oh, Eraserhead," the villain cackled as the man attacked, "protecting your student. So cool." Aizawa threw his capture weapon forwards, the villain snatching it out of the air as he charged towards the pro. The two men clashed, Aizawa raising his arm as he slammed his elbow into the villain's chest, gasping when the pain shot up his arm. Izuku wanted to throw up again as he saw the sleeve of his teacher rot away, the skin on his elbow flaking off, revealing muscle and tendon just before it stopped. The villain growled, glaring at the wound and the pro. "But you aren't using your quirk, Eraserhead. How are you erasing mine?" "He's not," the unsteady voice said as the two men glanced back at the teen, Izuku's eyes glowing bright red as he glared at the two men. "I am." "Oh. How annoying," the villain muttered. "No, Mew, take care of him. But don't kill him, yet." Izuku's eyes widened as he felt the sickening form of the quirk behind him suddenly move, spinning just in time to raise his arms to block the massive fist. "Get away!" Mina shrieked as the villain tried to clamber up the side of the boat, crying out in pain as the acid hit him on the face. "How do we get out of here, Kiro?" Tsuyu hummed, looking at the other two girls. "How far can you jump?" Okiko asked, looking at the shore, "Because if I float us, can you do it, though? Doesn't floating yourself make you nauseous?" Mina asked, looking back at the edge of the boat, watching for more villains. "I have to try," Okiko said, swallowing nervously, "you know, P plus ultra." "Good night," Denki called as he grabbed the villain, the man crying out as he was shocked, foam spewing from his mouth as he dropped. "Shut the FUP, Sparky." Bakugo howled as he blasted another villain off the edge of the cliff, the man screaming as he tumbled down the side of the mountain that made up the landslide zone. "Dude, chill," Kirishima shouted as he punched the electric quirk user in the face, hissing as he shook out his numb hands, "We got this." "OFF course we do." Bakugo screeched, "I'm F here." "P please help us." The quiet voice was projected over the area as Koda spoke into the microphone plugged into Gyro's boot, Momo beside them holding off the few villains that had found them in the small room they'd holed themselves up in. "The F good is that gonna do ya?" one of the villains cackled. "Maybe ya should call for ya mama next." "It worked." Koda gasped, looking up with slight smile as Momo jumped back beside them. "Help us, my small friends." "The F are you kids on?" Another of the villains laughed, taking a step forwards, pausing at the loud squeak, "The F." The villains that had gathered outside paused as they heard the screaming from inside the half-collapsed building, looking at each other in confusion. They didn't get time to react as the wave of rats shot from the cracks in the walls, the villains shrieking as they were overwhelmed. The rain beat down HD on the two fighters as they beat back wave after wave of villain, slowly making their way over to where they thought the exit was. Shoji slammed his fists into one villain's face, sending him careening into two more, knocking them all down. Ojiro smacked another with his tail, sending him toppling unconscious to the floor. "Just how many of them are there?" the tailed teen shouted to his partner as they stood back to back. "No idea," Shoji muttered from the mouth of one of his tentacles, "but we'll beat our way through them nonetheless." The ice surrounded him, flames frozen in place as the once burning Hell's Cape became a plain of ice. Shoto dodged the pole that was aimed at the back of his neck, catching it, and freezing the bird-like villain that was wielding it in place. "I don't have time for this," he muttered, before turning to the frozen villains around him. "Frostbite will set in soon enough. You'll probably lose a few limbs. I want to be a hero, however, so I don't really want that to happen. Now, tell me everything you know about how they plan to kill All Might." The villains swallowed nervously as they looked at the scowling teen. "𝐒𝐻𝐻," the mist villain grumbled, "didn't get all of them." What did you do to them?" Toru gasped, her gloves jerking erratically as she seemed to be looking around. "Where'd they go?" "Oh, your friends are around, for now," the villain chuckled, "but now I simply need to keep you in 𝐶-." The villain was cut off as dark shadows slammed into him, stunning the man as he was pinned to the wall. "Ida!" 13 shouted as the other students bolted towards the door. "You need to run to get help. We don't have communications right now, so you're our only hope." "Like I'd let you," the mist villain growled, suddenly vanishing from under Dark Shadow's hand, reappearing just in front of the door, but gone. "No," the shout made him pause, looking over just as 13 activated their quirk, dragging almost half the villain's mist-like body towards them. "Damn it," he swore, opening the portal just behind the pro, the hero shutting off their quirk a moment before it could hurt them. "This is getting ridiculous." The light flooded in as the door was yanked open, Krogiri looking over just in time to see the armored boy slip out, the other 3 standing guard at the door, glaring at him. "Damn it," he muttered, before vanishing into the air. Izuku grabbed at the quirk, his head aching as he forced it to work. The fist slammed into his arms, pain rocketing through his body as he was thrown back. He fought against the overwhelming sensation, grabbing at another quirk as he skidded across the floor. "Midoriya," he heard his teacher scream, the man still fighting off the last of the villains even as his arm hung limply at his side. "Oh," Izuku grunted as the dust cleared, his arms purple as he lay on the ground, having been thrown back by the creature's massive strength. That hurts like hell. Midoriya! Aizawa shouted. What? How? Shock absorption, the teen muttered as he staggered to his feet, his arms already almost fully healed as he stared down the monster, the creature looking at him strangely. What? But you said your quirk was sensing. The villain hissed. What the hell are you? How do you have more than one quirk? None of your business. Izuku shouted back, his breath catching as he felt a familiar collection quirks reappear. Tomura Shigaraki, the mist villain, said as he hovered beside the man's shoulder. One of the students managed to escape. Damn it, Kurogiri, if you weren't out warp gate out of here, I'd kill you right now, the villain called Shigaraki hissed. Someone? Izuku hummed, blinking as he felt the two quirks moving quickly away from the building. Ha! You're screwed now. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Shigaraki shouted, scratching at his neck as he threw a fit. This isn't how it's supposed to go. It's game over. Back to the title screen. Damn it. The best laid plans of mice and men, ℔𝑗𝐵. Izuku called as he slowly started backing away, locking eyes with Aizawa as the pro finished off the last of the other villains, the man breathing heavily, though I doubt you're smart enough to get that reference. Damn it. And All Might isn't even here. Shigaraki screamed, suddenly spinning to glare at Izuku. This is bullshit. And it's all your fault. Who? The teen said, pointing to himself. Me. Are you sure it isn't 'cause you're a dumbass? No, Mew, the man growled, kill him already. F that. The explosion engulfed the monster's head, throwing it back as Bakugo suddenly leapt over Izuku, his gauntlet already pulsing as he landed on the creature's shoulders, pointing it directly at its head. F die. Katsuki, no. Izuku screamed as he watched the monster grab the blonde. The snap and scream that followed made Izuku want to vomit, the massive black hand closing around Bakugo's leg just as he unleashed the explosion, snapping it like a twig. The blast from the gauntlet just barely clipped the side of the monster's head as the blonde was tossed aside, slamming into the wall as he coughed up a gout of BLD. And Izuku saw red. He grabbed at the quirks inside the beast, his head aching as he forced himself to copy the swirling mass of light. He felt sick. He felt so sick as the mass of twisted light grew within him, his body wanting to reject it as he stepped forwards, his bones groaning under his sudden new strength, splintering before healing just as quickly. He felt himself begin to black out, the world going dark as he struggled to maintain the mess of power within him. Suddenly, an image appeared in his mind. A star. The star that was All Might's quirk, each quirk feeding off a single central point. He grabbed the light inside of him. And pulled. Shota swore as he watched his student get thrown aside like some piece of trash by the thing called Nomyu, even with its quirk erased. Instinct screamed at him to rush to the blonde's side and check his injuries. But he couldn't. Not yet. Not with Midoriya screaming bloody murder and charging towards the beast. So, Shota kept his eyes locked onto the creature, praying that whatever quirk it had, it would be enough to protect his student. Kirishima and Kaminari flinched at the sound of snapping bone, eyes going wide as the creature hurled Bakugo aside like he was nothing. The two looked at each other as they stood at the edge of the plaza and nodded. Izuku stepped forwards and punched, his arm bulging as the shock absorption quirk compensated for the feedback of the massive strength, the super regeneration healing the microfractures that shot up his arm in an instant. The creature staggered back, its body not healing for a moment as the teen shot forwards again, landing a second punch. Thanks, sensei. Izuku called as he attacked the monster again, his eyes darted towards the man that stood breathing nearby, eyes glowing red as he erased the monster's quirks. The Nomyu howled as it slammed its fist into Izuku, the teen returning the punch, the monster's fist breaking under the attack. What? How are you beating Nomyu? The pale-haired man growled. Midoriya! Aizawa shouted. Do it! Izuku shouted back, jumping out of the way of the beast's next attack as his own eyes glowed red, Aizawa thankfully able to blink. I'm on it again, the teacher shouted as Izuku shot forwards, his body audibly groaning under the stress. Izuku slammed another punch into the Nomyu, making it stagger back more as he began speeding up, its chest starting to cave in under the onslaught. Stop ignoring me! Shigaraki screamed as he lunged at Izuku, hands outstretched. The hand grabbed Shigaraki's wrist as glowing red eyes met his own, the teen yanking the villain towards him just as the massive fist bared down on them. Shigaraki shrieked as his arms were yanked behind him, the boy's surprising strength pinning his arms behind his back, hands pressed together. The wind pressure slammed into them, almost knocking them back as the creatures suddenly froze. "I thought so," Izuku muttered, "you can't hurt your owner." "What are you doing?" Shigaraki growled, "I'll kill you. I'll kill you all. Kurogiri. Do something." The mist-like villain glanced over at them, before twisting his head like he was listening to something, a slight murmur coming from his form. "Or you could shut up," Izuku growled right back, taking the villain by surprise, "otherwise I might just copy your quirk right now." "Copy my, so that's what it is," Shigaraki suddenly cackled, "that's how you have multiple quirks. You can copy them. Yes, Sensei would definitely be interested in you. I'm sure, and unless you want to know what yours feels like, I suggest calling off your pet abomination and surrendering," Izuku replied, squeezing the villain's wrists tightly. "I'm sure it'll make it a lot harder for you to use your quirk when you're missing your hands." "How vicious," the man giggled, the sound making Izuku's skin crawl, "and I thought you were supposed to be training to be a hero." "Underground," Izuku chuckled back, an edge to his voice as he glanced at the monster, "we do what is necessary to protect from the shadows." "How poetic," the villain spat, "but what do we do now, little hero? Are you going to be just like the rest? Because might makes right, doesn't it? You can do what you like because you're stronger than others, right?" "Nah," Izuku chuckled, drawing his head back slightly as he grabbed the monster's quirks again. "Now go to sleep." The headbutt slammed into the back of Shigaraki's head, snapping it forwards as Izuku dropped him, immediately leaping back just as the Nomyu screamed, charging at him. A quick glance to the side gave Izuku the information he needed, the teen digging his heels into the ground as he skidded to a halt. "Let's finish this," Izuku shouted as he charged forwards, plus ultra. The punch slammed into the Nomyu's face, twisting the creature's head around with a loud snap, Aizawa blinking at the sound. The monster made a keening noise for a moment as it seemed to try pulling its head back into place. Its arms flailed weakly, as if it couldn't control them properly, before a wave of ice engulfed it, a second, dark blue, layer quickly joining it as Izuku grinned at the nearby Todoroki. The ice groaned as the creature inside seemed to fight against it, Izuku and Shoto both quickly adding another layer of ice to the creature's prison. "Time to skedaddle," Izuku yelled as he lifted his foot from the ground, flames already liking across the left side of his body as he thawed himself out. "Midoriya," Izuku flinched at the stern tone of voice as the older man rushed up to him. "What the hell was that?" "Nothing we can't discuss outside," the teen replied hurriedly, grabbing the man by his uninjured arm, and pulling him towards the exit. "Seriously, I have no idea how long that ice will hold Big and Ugly, and what he'll do once he gets out." "I am here," the shout echoed through the building as the doors were blasted out of the frame, a very sest-off-looking All Might looming at the top of the stairs, "and I am, what?" The pro looked out over the plaza, the unconscious villains scattered across the concrete as two of his students dragged Bakugo up the stairs, the boy obviously unconscious, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Just behind them, Midoriya was all but dragging Aizawa away, Todoroki walking close beside them as he watched the teen drag their teacher towards the stairs. "What happened here?" he asked, running down the stairs to assist Kaminari and Kirishima, easily picking Bakugo up out of their arms, flinching slightly as he saw the BLD on the edge of his mouth. "You were late," Aizawa growled as he staggered past, the wound on his elbow dripping BLD even as he wrapped his capture weapon tightly around it. "Next time, don't be." "Yeah, let's wait until we're outside away from the multi-quirked monster before we start throwing shade," Izuku grumbled. "Don't sass me, boy," Aizawa growled back. "At least I know when sass is appropriate," Izuku huffed. That was amazing. The shout startled the class out of their stupor as they all turned to look at Kaminari, the blonde grinning at Izuku. "Dude, that was so cool. How'd you take on that big bird-looking dude like that? What kind of quirk did he have?" The green-haired teen muttered in explanation. "Oh, those two things had multiple quirks. I was just using them separately at first." "Multiple quirks?" Yorozu asked, but that's impossible. Apparently not, Izuku sighed, I felt them. I copied them. All that bird-looking guy's quirks. At once. I didn't know I could do that. Whoa, really? Kirishima asked, you didn't know something about your own quirk? Never tried to copy multiple quirks at once, Izuku shrugged, quickly falling into a mutter storm as he pulled his small notepad out, beginning to scribble in it. Normally I can only copy from one person at a time. Maybe that's it. Because those two had multiple quirks in their bodies, I could copy them, but then what's the limit? Do I even have a limit? Towards the end I managed to make the 𝐿 quirk more like 𝐿. The small paw slapped over his mouth as the teen was startled out of his muttering, looking down at the rodent-like principle that was attached to it. Now, Midoriya-san, the creature said, a slight glint in his eye, you really need to learn to control that muttering of yours. Weiss, principal, Izuku managed to say around the paw as he shivered, feeling like a mouse beneath the gaze of a very hungry cat. I'll work on it. You idiot! The shout made Izuku flinch as he turned to see a fuming Nito charging towards him. The other members of his group could only watch as the angry copy quirk users stomped up to them. I swear. I tell you every day, we're going to be underground heroes, so don't do anything flashy. And then you go and save your entire class from some villain attack. The blonde yelled as he grabbed Izuku by the arm, dragging him away from the rest of his class. I swear, Auntie Inko is going to have a heart attack because you one of these days. Are you hurt? Nope, Izuku said as Monoma released his wrist, giving the teen a disbelieving look. One of the villains had a regeneration quirk I could copy, so I'm fine. Which means you did get hurt, Monoma growled. Seriously? It feels like if I'm not there to keep you under control, you just attract trouble. Are you sure you aren't copying a quirk like that? Positive. Izuku laughed as his friend seemed to deflate, having let out his worry. Goddamn, you 1A kids are really trying to show us up, aren't you? Nito sighed, maybe I should see about getting transferred. Hopefully, they'd swap me with Bakugo. I don't know, Izuku laughed, wasn't it you who said they couldn't put so much excellence in one class? Oh, shut up. Tomura, the shadowy figure sighed as he watched the camera feed of the young man being knocked out, the form of Kurogiri vanishing into thin air a moment later, a portal opening beneath the unconscious villain, his limp body falling through. You have failed me once again. He turned to another screen, watching as the green-haired teen beat back the gnome meant to face All Might, a wicked smile inching across his face as he encased it in ice an instant later. You, on the other hand, what an interesting quirk. Thank you to Critical Warrior and Earth Dragoon for beta reading this chapter. The sports festival will be going on as planned, Aizawa said as he walked out of the class, scratching at the bandages on his elbow. Make sure to prepare accordingly. Wow! Ashido said as she leaned back in her chair, I was wondering if they would allow it after the USJ incident. Well, like Sensei said, Ida explained as he chopped his arms through the air, Yue needs to show that it is not afraid of some villains. I was so scared, Toru hummed as she sagged slightly. I was sure that they would send someone after Ida and me while we were running off. Also, I felt so bad just leaving you guys behind. Hey, it was a really smart plan. Izuku called, having 10 years speed to get you there as fast as possible, and Toru-chan's invisibility to escape in case they did send someone after you. I too felt bad about abandoning my fellow classmates, Hagaki-san. Ida nodded as he spoke, placing a hand on her shoulder. However, as Midoriya said, it was necessary for the safety of all that we did so. Could have gone a lot worse, Uraka hummed as she stretched at her desk, but we had Midoriya to help us. You really saved us there. All in a day's work, Izuku laughed. You say that, Chako, Mina chuckled, but you basically saved Zu and me in the flood zone. Because of you, we were able to fly right over the plaza to the entrance without having to fight anyone. Oh, it's no big deal. The brunette blushed as she rubbed the back of her head, though we did see Midoriya fighting that big black-skinned guy. What was that about? I am also interested, Momo said as she approached the group. Midoriya, you mentioned something about them having multiple quirks. Yeah, Izuku hummed, blinking as he looked up at the door, raising an eyebrow as Bakugo grabbed a hold of the handle. Hey Kaken dash. F. The blonde yelled as he slammed the door open, pausing at the crowd outside. The hell do you extras want? Extras, one member of the crowd said, stepping forwards, a tired grin under his thick eye bags, his purple hair sticking straight up. Wow, you hero course kids really are that arrogant, here. We're just scoping out the opposition. You know, if the Gen Ed students do well enough, we can replace a hero class stud dash. Awesome Quirk. The shout cut him off as Izuku pushed past Bakugo, staring starry-eyed at the purple-haired teen. Dude. If your quirk works the way I think it does, wow. You should totally have been in the hero class. You would make a perfect underground hero. But I guess the entrance exam screwed you, right? What? Who the hell are you? The boy said, stepping back as Izuku produced a notebook. Oh, sorry. Izuku grinned as he held out a hand. Izuku Midoriya, my quirk is called Echo. I can sense and copy the quirks of those within a 2-meter radius of myself. Copy? The boy asked. And sense. Like, you can tell what they do. Exactly. Izuku hummed as he stepped closer to the boy. Now, can you tell me more about your quirk? I'd love to help you develop it. Move, Deku. Bakugo screeched as he shoved past the two of them. I'll kill all of you if you think you can beat me. Kill, the purple-haired teen muttered. Oh, ignore him, he's always like that, Izuku chuckled. Inferiority complex up the butt. Anyway, your quirk. Izuku followed the mystery Gen Ed student as he tried to back away, breaking into a sprint after him as soon as he tried to run, Ida shrieking about not running in the halls after them. Okiko watched as Izuku disappeared through the door, leaning over and muttering to Momo, I thought his range was 10 meters. Sensei, Tomura Shigaraki said as he scratched at the bandages wrapped around his head, the large bump on the back of his head still not having gone down. I want to kill him. Of course you do, the voice replied from the television, a hint of tiredness in it, the young man looking at the screen in surprise. Sensei, is something wrong? Tomura asked, did I do something wrong? No, Tomura Shigaraki, you did nothing wrong, the voice said reassuringly, all hint of tiredness gone. Just because your plan failed doesn't mean that I'm upset. Remember, I will always be here to support you, no matter what. Thank you, Sensei, Tomura said as the screen went blank, before turning to look at Kurogiri, the man dressed in his bartender uniform. Yes, Tomura Shigaraki. What is it? The mist-like man asked, not looking up from the glass he was cleaning. Call Jiran, we need more people, Shigaraki growled, but better people this time. No useless creeps. Actual party members. Of course, Tomura Shigaraki, Kurogiri said, setting the glass down and pulling out a cell phone, anything for you. So, the principal said as he took a sip of tea, what was it that you wished to speak to me so urgently about? And what does it have to do with one of our students? That creature, the thing the villains called Nomu, Aizawa said slowly, looking over at Toshinori Yagi, the skinny man sat beside him. Midoriya said it had multiple quirks. Ah yes, Nedzu hummed as he looked at the two men seated opposite him, Aizawa glaring at them both, a most worrying piece of information. Though I do believe he mentioned something similar about your own quirk as well, Yagi-san. He did. Yagi muttered, the skeletal man swallowing nervously. Don't worry, I stopped him before he could leak anything deeming, Nedzu hummed, though it certainly feels off to be talking about a person without them present. So, shall we invite Mr. Midoriya in? Hello Principal Nedzu, Aizawa-sensei, All Might, or should I call you Yagi-san here as well? Izuku asked, making both men start as he stepped into the room. Why was he in the cupboard? Aizawa muttered, and what are you playing at bringing a student here when All Might is like this? It was his idea, Nedzu chuckled, I thought it sounded amusing. As for why Midoriya can be here, well, why don't you tell us yourself, young man? I met All Might about 10 months before the entrance exams, Izuku shrugged as he pulled up a third chair, sitting casually in it. I saw his deflated form then, and I haven't told anyone yet. Not even Nito. Nito Minoma, Aizawa nodded, the other copier from Class B. How do you know each other? Your type of quirks are rare, so it shouldn't be a coincidence that two of you are acquainted. And it's not, Izuku said, we both go to the same quirk specialist, Dr. Junko Natori. He specializes in quirks like ours. He introduced us when we were about 5 or 6, I think. We both needed a friend who could understand us. Good to know, the teacher grunted, making a mental note to look up the man in the future. But that's hardly what we're here for, now is it? Nezu chimed in, Midoriya, if you'd be so kind as to explain. Sure thing, Nezu sir. The teen grinned easily, making both men shudder. No one should be able to smile like that around the principal. I was able to copy all of the Nomu's quirks at once, something I had no idea I could do, except it made me feel exceptionally ill to do so. Just being around those things. The teen shuddered as he trailed off for a moment, before seeming to collect himself and continuing. Anyway, I could barely handle the feeling, until I did something. Izuku said, looking at Yagi. I manipulated the quirks. To be exact, I made them look like yours, Yagi-san. Like mine? Yagi asked, drawing a confused look from Aizawa. Yeah, Izuku nodded. At first, they were like a mess of torn-up light, but then I sort of forced them to work together. And how did you do that? Aizawa growled. I thought you could only copy quirks. And I can, it's just the way that I do it is kind of special. Izuku shrugged. I can sort of manipulate my own quirk factor to emulate the quirk factors of others. At least, that's the theory behind it. You can what? The two men said simultaneously, staring at him in shock. Manipulate my quirk factor, Izuku repeated, and a side effect of that is that I can sense the quirk factors of others. Quite the incredible quirk, Nezu hummed as he took another sip of tea, and quite dangerous if it were to get into the wrong hands. Yeah, Izuku nodded as he grinned, except it's not like there's anyone who can actually take quirks, is there? Izuku grinned slightly as he looked at the three men, his smile falling at their solemn looks. Oh there is, isn't there? Any ideas who you would want to intern within the future? Aizawa asked. Well, Izuku blushed slightly as he rubbed the back of his head, the two of them walking towards the classroom. I was kind of hoping I could do something like that with you, actually. Me? Aizawa was genuinely surprised. Why? Isn't my quirk essentially the opposite of yours? Which is exactly why. Izuku said, you erase quirks, I replicate them. I need as much experience in different ways of fighting as I can get, so I know how best to use another person's quirk. And I kind of want to learn how to fight quirkless properly, for when I can't copy other quirks. Also I think your quirk is really cool. Aizawa reeled slightly at the kid's honesty and sincerity but was impressed by his forward thinking. Not totally illogical, the pro grumbled as he nodded to the youth, remembering the time he'd thought of teaching him and his friend how to properly fight at the beach, except internships are meant to teach you things you can't learn inside UA. So, you'll have to choose someone else. Oh, the teen gave a dejected sigh as he opened the classroom door. Thanks anyway. A thought popped into Shota's head as he watched the teen enter the classroom. Maybe I should recommend him to her. Elsewhere, in a completely different school classroom, a woman with light green hair suddenly sat up, a tingle running up her spine as a wide grin stretched across her face. It's pretty interesting that they're allowing the sports festival to go on even after your class was attacked like that, the blonde muttered as the two boys sat in Izuku's room doing their homework. Hey, we managed to drive off the guys behind it, so it should be safe, Izuku hummed in reply, musing over a math problem. And anyway, it's not like we were in that much danger. Aizawa-sensei and 13 were right there, so we had protection. Says the guy who had both his arms broken by a bird monster, Nito huffed as he glared at his friend. And don't try to wave it off, you butt. You really had me worried. Or, love you too, Izuku chuckled as he wrote down the answer. Hey, want to go train after this? Sure, the blonde hummed. The sports festival is only 2 weeks away. It's best we step up our training in preparation. Hey, who do you want to intern with? Here. What brought on that question? Nito asked as the two of them sat in the park after their exercise, Izuku snapping the ice cream in half and handing one to the blonde. Aizawa-sensei mentioned it the other day, Izuku shrugged, and it's had me thinking. Oh. Nito muttered around his ice cream, watching the green-haired teen with interest as he teasingly poked him in the side. And did you tell him who you want to go with? Yes, actually, Izuku laughed as he bit into his own ice cream, making Nito wince slightly. I did. But he said I had to choose someone else. Something about having to learn outside of UA. Well, unlucky you, Nito hummed. I still have no idea. Probably someone who can teach me how to fight and disable opponents, while giving me maximum skin contact. Oh. Then I'd say Gunhead or someone similar. Izuku grinned. He has his own entire martial arts style centered around counters and pins, so it would be perfect for you. Not a bad point, Nito muttered. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Thanks, Izuku. No problem, Anin. The other teen laughed. Stop calling me that. So, how's your first few weeks at UA been? The man asked as he grinned at Izuku, the teen smiling back. Pretty good, I've made friends, despite Kaken's best efforts, and there are so many interesting quirks. Izuku said enthusiastically, I met this one guy who has a quirk that would be perfect for underground heroics, even better than Nito's or mine. Except he couldn't pass the entrance exam practical because it's a mental quirk. Oh. I feel sorry for him, Natori hummed as he wrote on a notepad. Are you at liberty to say what his quirk was? Were you able to copy it? I don't know, Izuku shrugged. He wasn't very open about it. I think he has a complex about it. He said something about it being a villain's quirk, I think. Natori hummed, nodding to Izuku as the teen continued. Anyway, it does something to the mind of the target, Izuku said, pulling out his notebook and leafing through the pages. I couldn't get him to tell me exactly what, but I was able to figure that much out at least. You didn't chase him down, did you? Natori sighed, giving Izuku a tired look, the teens fidgeting slightly. Izuku, we've talked about this. You can't force people to tell you about their quirks. And I didn't. As soon as he made it obvious that he was uncomfortable talking about it, I backed off, Izuku said hurriedly, but I did figure out its trigger. It's response-based. Response-based. Natori hummed, so, a mental quirk that's response-based. That actually sounds very powerful, especially for an underground hero. That's exactly what I told him. Izuku grinned. I could copy it, but couldn't figure out how to actually get it to work. So, there must be some special feeling that's needed. Interesting, Natori muttered, scribbling something else down on his notepad. Well, that's our time up. Send Nito in for me, would you? I'll make sure to finish his session as quickly as possible so the two of you can go train. The sports festival is only a week away, after all. Sure thing, Natori-sensei. Izuku grunted as the fist slammed into his gut, knocking him to the ground, where he quickly righted himself, staggering to his feet just in time to block the kick. You're still too slow, Nito breathed as he shot out another punch, Izuku just barely dodging it. Stronger than you, though, Izuku shot back. Your punches are like fairy kisses. That just makes you a meathead. Nito laughed as he tried to tackle Izuku. And you're a lightweight, the green-haired teen countered, meeting the blonde with a tackle of his own. The two teens grunted as they fought for superiority, Izuku quickly overpowering Nito as the blonde struggled under the other's strength. Suddenly, a grin shot across the blonde's face, letting his body go loose as he fell backwards. Izuku squawked in surprise as he was dragged forwards, coughing as the foot hit his chest, Nito throwing him over his body to land heavily on the sand. Oh, Izuku muttered, barely managing to roll out of the way as Nito leapt to his feet and tried to stamp on him, going all out. Of course, Nito growled, jumping over Izuku's hand as the teen tried to grab his ankle. I have to in order to have a hope of taking you down. Like I said, lightweight. Izuku laughed as he stumbled back to his feet, darting forwards with a jab, Nito hissing as he blocked it, forcing him back several feet. And you're just a meathead. Nito shouted as he jumped forwards, Izuku leaping in at the same time, the two crying out as their skulls slammed into each other, the two collapsing to the ground clutching their heads. Oh, how hard is your demon head? Izuku groaned. I could ask you the same thing. Nito muttered as the two sat back on the sand. Damn it, this isn't working. What do you mean? Izuku breathed slightly as he moved over to grab their water bottles, tossing Nito's to him. We're already too familiar with each other's fighting styles, Nito replied. We're going to develop weird habits if we keep this up. like Kaken and his right hooks. Izuku hummed through his bottle. Exactly, Nito nodded. We need something more. Variation. Guidance. A teacher. Oh, and who should we ask to do that? We don't exactly have a ton of money for a dojo membership, Izuku chuckled, already knowing where his friend was going. And we won't need any, Nito said, grinning back. Extra training. Aizawa muttered as he looked at the two boys standing beside his desk. What for? The sports festival, Izuku said. You know that Nito and I don't really know how to fight properly, so we were hoping you'd be willing to show us some of the basics. You already get the basics from your sparring classes, Aizawa grunted. What's the real reason? Oh, for crying out loud, Izuku, Nito sighed, looking at the teacher. We want to learn to fight like you. You're the only underground pro we know and have access to, so you're the best option. Oh. And what will I get out of this? Aizawa muttered, going back to his work. I'm very busy. What makes you think I have the time to work with you? You're a teacher, Nito huffed. It's your job to help students when they ask. 𝐒𝐻𝐻, Shota huffed as he glared at the blonde, before giving a quiet sigh. Fine. But if you can't keep up, I'm stopping. Thank you, sensei, the two said simultaneously as they bowed. Worst best decision we've ever made. Izuku groaned from the floor, currently laid out on the mats as he watched his homeroom teacher basically fling Nito across the room. I concur, the blonde coughed as he was slammed into the ground beside Izuku. Come on, you two, Eraserhead growled. If you have enough energy to make quips, you have enough energy to keep going. Yes, sensei, the two cried as they jumped to their feet, charging the man again. Hey Midori, do you think you could help me with my quirk? Mina shouted as the class ended, jumping up from her seat and hurrying over the green-haired teen. Here. Oh, sure, Izuku replied, smiling up at her. Hey, I wanted to ask him to help me too. Kirishima called as he rushed over. You had me thinking about my quirk and how hard I can make myself. And I'd be glad to help you get harder, Izuku chuckled calmly, making the red head blush slightly. Anyone else want some help with their quirks? Several more of the class called out in confirmation, gathering around his desk. I don't need your help, worthless Deku. Bakugo screeched as he shoved past the other students, and I'll kick your butt in the sports festival. Wasn't asking you, Kaken, Izuku hummed as he pulled out his notebook. So, how about we make a schedule? I can ask Nito to help out too, so the people with mutant-type quirks can join in as well. That'd be great, Kero, Tsuyu said. I have some ideas of how I can increase my frogginess myself, but having the help would be appreciated. An external perspective may reveal aspects of my quirk I hadn't thought about before. Ida said as he chopped the air. Sure thing. Izuku laughed. I also have some ideas for support gear, if you guys are interested. So, if you cup your hands like this, you can spray the acid much further. Oh wow. I never thought of that. The pink-skinned girl gasped as she watched the stream of fluid spray out from between Izuku's fingers, the teen shaking the excess off and rubbing his hands on a towel. Thanks Midori. Anytime, Pinky. Pinky. Mina giggled. What is that supposed to mean? Well, you're pink, aren't you? Izuku chuckled. I assume the rest of you is much the same. Though I have to ask, do you tan? Tan, the girl asked. I don't actually know. I've never tried. Well, we can check pretty easily, Izuku hummed as he pulled off his gym uniform jacket, Mina feeling her cheeks heat up slightly as he pointed to his bicep. We just have to look for tan lines. Oh, Mina giggled, her eyes roaming over the rest of him as she took in just how toned his body was, a few scars littering his body that just added to the ruggedness, I guess. So, the teen asked innocently, looking at her. So? Well, you'll need to take off your top. The two stared at each other for a moment, before Mina's whole head burst into a bright purple blush, the girl stunned by the comment. Harder! Harder! The shouts were accompanied by the sounds of clashing and grinding stone, the two teens punching each other as hard as they could as they sparred. Kirishima was as hard as he could go, his body lined with sharp angles and his hair spiked. Izuku looked much the same, his shirt shredding as they punched each other, his hair turning into a bed of green spikes much like a hedgehog. Are you a man or are you going to beat me harder? 𝐒𝐬𝐽 yelled as Kirishima swung a massive uppercut, catching the teen in the chin with the sound of cracking stone. Manly, the teen yelled as 𝐒𝐬𝐽 was thrown back, thin cracks forming up his jawline as similar cracks covered Kirishima's fist. Nice punch, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 said as he got to his feet, but you can go harder. Kirishima stared as 𝐒𝐬𝐽 suddenly shifted, the angles of his body growing even sharper as his gym uniform was shredded off of him, falling to the ground, the sound of screeching stone echoing through the gym as he moved. Dude, so manly, Kirishima called as the other teen darted forwards, slamming a hardened fist into his stomach, throwing him to the floor. Whoa, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 gasped as he released the quirk. Man, it is hard to move like that. Dude, that was extra manly. How'd you do it? Kirishima shouted as he jumped to his feet. I just went maximum hardness, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 said as he patted Kirishima on the shoulder, though I can only hold it for a few seconds. But with practice I'm sure you'd be able to do it for even longer. Awesome. It's like a super move. Kirishima laughed, blinking as he looked over 𝐒𝐬𝐽, the teen's clothes basically entirely shredded off of him. Oh shoot, your gym uniform. It's fine, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 shrugged. I'm used to quirks messing up my clothes. I have spares. Also gives me an excuse to show off. Kirishima blushed as 𝐒𝐽 flexed, impressed by the tightly formed muscles that covered his body. Manly, the teen whispered to himself. Okay, flash me, 𝐒𝐽 said, looking at the invisible girl. What? Toru gasped, that's too bold, Midori. What? 𝐒𝐽 replied, smirking slightly at her. I meant with your quirk, Toru-chan. Oh, the girl said, pulling open her gym jacket. Not that part of your quirk. You can just use your hand, 𝐒𝐽 laughed, though I'm not going to complain if it makes it easier. Oh. Right. The girl said as she pulled the zipper back up, the light warping around her hand a moment later. So, it's like this, right? The flash was bright, making both of them reel back as they rubbed their eyes. Yep, 𝐒𝐽 hummed, blinking rapidly as his sight returned. Oh, that hurt, Toru muttered. How am I supposed to use this if it blinds me as well? Then just close your eyes for the second that you use it, 𝐒𝐽 shrugged. You know when it's going to happen and your opponent doesn't, so it should be okay. I guess, but closing my eyes like that is kind of scary. Don't worry, it's just me here right now, 𝐒𝐽 said softly, giving her a bright smile. I won't hurt you. Oh okay, Toru said as she felt her cheeks burn, grateful for once that she couldn't actually be seen. So, why am I here, Midori? Kyoka asked as she looked at the two boys walking to the mats. You can't copy my quirk so, oh, well Denki and I are going to test his upper limits, 𝐒𝐽 explained. That means that we're both going to be out of it for a while. We need someone responsible to make sure we don't hurt ourselves. Responsible? Kyoka muttered as her jacks tapped together in front of her. Me? Yeah, 𝐒𝐽 grinned as he suddenly seemed to remember something. Oh, hold on. The two teens watched as he ran out of the room, both shrugging to the other before he burst back in, something clutched in his hand. Let me just, he muttered as he reached for Kyoka's ears, gently sweeping her hair behind them before pressing something into them. Okay. Yeah. Denki jumped as 𝐒𝐽 shouted right into Kyoka's ear, immediately running forwards as the girl stared at the green-haired teen in surprise. Dude. Gyro has really sensitive ears. Why did you do that? It didn't hurt, Kyoka muttered, making Denki stop as he looked at the two of them, a small red blush burning on Kyoka's ears. The sound just vanished. Reactive earplugs, 𝐒𝐽 said, they block out any noise over a certain level of volume. This way you shouldn't have as much trouble with loud noises in the future. Thank you, Midoriya, Kyoka gasped as she looked up at the other teen. Where'd you even get these? Oh, some crazy girl in the support department made them, 𝐒𝐽 laughed happily. Her name is Hatsume, so if you want them adjusted, you'll have to go to her. Be careful though, she managed to cause 3 explosions while she made those, and that's not even her quirk. Dude, that's awesome. Denki said as he looked at the strange devices now pressed into Kyoka's ears, and you can barely see them from the front. Yep, they have a built-in communicator as well. 𝐒𝐽 explained, though enough talk about tech. It's time to fry our brains, Denki. You're on, dude. It's not meant to be a contest, it's 𝐂𝐬𝐽 sighed, running her fingers over the devices in her ears, her blush inching from her ears to her cheeks. Okay, so we're going to be testing just how much of your fatty lipids your quirk uses when you produce certain types of materials, Izuku explained as Momo watched him shuffle through some papers. I printed off a bunch of molecular structures as well so we can see what the extent of your abilities are. Wow, you're very well prepared, Midoriya, Momo said as she accepted the papers, looking at the first page. Wait, carbon nanostructures. Can I even make this? No idea, Izuku shrugged. That's why we're doing this. To test. Though for now we need a baseline. Okay, and how do we get that? Momo asked. Well, I'm going to need to feel your primary fat stores, then you're going to produce stuff from them. Do you mind if I touch you? Izuku explained as he held out his hands, Momo blushing slightly as she looked at him. You can check them instead, if it'd make you more comfortable. And no, it's fine, she said as she turned away from him, inhaling sharply as he touched her shoulders. His hands moved deftly down her arms, squeezing her limbs gently but firmly, before heading back up and running down her back. Momo let out a small squeak as he gently squeezed her sides, Izuku immediately letting go and looking up at her. Are you okay? He asked. Did I hurt you? No, you can keep going, Momo breathed, inhaling sharply as he ran his hands over her stomach. Once you've made the test items, I'll have to feel you again and see if I can find any difference. Izuku spoke calmly, Momo trying to hide her blush. If my theory is correct, you have far denser fat stores than average, otherwise you'd be emaciated after producing a single large object. Oh, the girl gasped as his hands slid further down her body, her face lighting up in a blush as they ran quickly over her buttocks and down to her thighs, where he softly massaged her legs. He's just checking your fat stores, she thought, shivering slightly as he squeezed her calves. It's not anything inappropriate. Okay, Izuku suddenly said, releasing her and standing up. There's still one area to check, but I think you'll want to do that yourself. Oh, the girl breathed slightly, trying to recompose herself. Why? Well, unless you want me touching your breasts, Izuku shrugged, Momo's face going bright red again. Yeah, didn't think so. Just feel them carefully and then try to see if there's a noticeable difference after you've made something. What are we making? Momo asked, desperate to change the conversation. First, 1 kilogram of lead, Izuku said, pulling out a specific page and showing it to her. Why lead? It's dense, so it should use a decent amount of your fat stores, and it's not very valuable, so you don't have to worry about causing a market crash or anything, Izuku explained. Of course, we could do gold if you want. No. Lead is fine. Where should I start? Momo gasped. Well, you'll need to STP, Izuku said, turning to dig around in his gym bag, before holding out something to her. Here, they're clean, so you don't have to worry. What? Momo said as she looked at the running shorts. Put on the shorts, and a tank top or something, unless you're comfortable in your sports bra, Izuku said. You'll need as much skin exposed as possible to make the tests easier, and I don't think you want to stand around in your panties. No, I don't, Momo said as she took the shorts and hurried to the changing rooms, her face still bright red. Thank you all for agreeing to do this together, Izuku said with a grin as he looked at his 4 classmates. And thanks again for agreeing to do this, Nito. Not a problem, the blonde chuckled. I can think of it as intelligence gathering for the sports festival. Stop being an but, Izuku sighed, looking apologetically at the others. Well, who wants to go first? I will, Kero, Tsuyu croaked as she stepped forwards, Nito doing the same and holding out his hand. He said as he gripped Tsuyu's hand for a moment. Well, my leg muscles have definitely changed. And my stomach. He spluttered as his tongue suddenly poked out of his mouth, the blonde swearing quietly as he bit it. Yeah, you have to be careful of that, Kero, the frog-like girl said. Hey Midoriya, why don't you copy Monoma's quirk and try as well? The 2 boys looked at each other with a slight grimace, making the 4 mutant students blink. We have done that before, Izuku started, looking away nervously, but, well, it didn't end well, Nito continued. Turns out that if he stops copying my quirk while holding a mutation-type quirk, it stays. Oh. Then why does Midoriya have no visible mutations? Ida asked. Well, I sort of heal from them, Izuku sighed. His body returns to normal over time. Thought the process is, Nito muttered. Painful, Izuku finished, it's very painful. Oh, I apologize, Ida gasped, bowing low, and Tsuyu gave them an apologetic look. I'm sorry as well, Kiro, the girl said, I didn't mean anything by it. Not a problem. Izuku chuckled, suddenly back to his old self. I'd want to know too if I were in your position. Now, let's get back to training. Midoriya, Todoroki said as he walked up to the chatting teen, the rest of the class falling silent as they stood in the stadium waiting room. Your quirk allows you to copy the quirks of others. Yeah. Izuku grinned. What? Worried. That means if you copy mine, I'll be using the flames. Izuku hummed, startling the heterochromatic teen. Yes. I don't know why you aren't, but if I need your quirk, I'll be using the whole thing. Todoroki just growled before turning away, a conflicted look on his face. Hi everyone. Izuku called as he stood behind the podium at the sports festival, smiling widely at the students gathered below him. I'm super proud to be here. As I'm sure are all of you. The students looked at him strangely as he spoke, some whispering to each other at his strangely chipper personality. As I'm sure you've all heard by now, I can copy quirks. The murmuring got louder, though Izuku was sure he heard a certain someone slapping his face in exasperation. So I just wanted to thank you all for letting me use your quirks to compete today. I'll make sure to showcase them properly. Other than that, may the best student win. Plus Ultra. Izuku walked forward silently, a 2-meter gap between him and the rest of the crowd as he positioned himself right on the starting line. He grinned as he closed his eyes, feeling the myriad of quirks around him, each flashing as their owners prepared to use them. He quickly picked out a few that he could use to get started, a strategy already forming in his mind. Start! The crowd surged forwards, Izuku taking a deep breath as he ran. A moment later, he felt the light of Todoroki's quirk surge, jumping off the ground and expelling the breath in his lungs as hard as he could. The air swirled below him, forming into an invisible disc as he landed on its angled surface. He grabbed the next quirk, the familiar feeling of the soles of his feet tingling as he activated it, launching himself forwards over the tightly packed crowd in the exit. His back tingled as he activated Yorozu's quirk, the girl launching herself over the crowd with a long iron rod she was producing from her hand. Izuku grinned as his jacket ripped, the metal and fabric wings snapping out as he finished creating the object. Whoa, Eraser! MIC shouted over the speakers. Did Midoriya have permission to use support gear? No, the man grumbled, but he can copy quirks and is very smart. He spent the last 2 weeks gathering information on as many of the student body's quirks as he could. My guess is he used Yorozu's quirk to make those wings. Fancy! MIC shouted as Izuku pointed his hands behind him. Izuku grinned as he felt the sweat on his palms change, before releasing a massive explosion at just the right angle to shoot him forwards and keep him airborne. The wings rattled on his back as they caught the wind, carrying him over the frozen ground as he caught up to Todoroki, the other teen already freezing over one of the 0-pointers as he approached. Hey Isuchi-chan! Izuku shouted as he swooped through the air, catching Todoroki's attention for a moment as he passed overhead. Flame on! Goodbye Shu, you have served me well, Izuku thought as he positioned his feet behind him, feeling the heat of the fire building on the sole of his left foot. A sound like a jet engine filled the air. As he felt his foot ignite, the stream of flame exploding off his skin, vaporizing the shoe in an instant. He shot forwards like a rocket, blinking as he looked down at the massive chasm that opened beneath him. Before he could react, he was on the other side, just as he heard a snap. The wings on his back folded in on themselves as he tumbled down through the air, slamming hard into the ground. He grabbed at the release on his chest, yanking the cord as the entire construction flew from his back, taking the last of his jacket with it. He rolled over the hard ground, staggering to his feet as he heard MIC shouting something over speaker system, his ears still ringing too loudly to hear him properly. He dusted himself off, looking down at his well-muscled body to make sure that he didn't have any particularly bad injuries, before running on. He reached the minefield just as his hearing returned fully, listening to MIC announcing that several others had made it across the chasm. Looking down, 𝐒𝐿 sighed as he searched for a quirk that could help instinctively, groaning when he realized that he was too far ahead to be able to copy any easily. Oh well, this is why I train my body. If Aizawa-sensei can fight like a quirkless person, so can I, he thought, taking a step forward. Shoto was furious. He knew that Midoriya had said that he would use the fire of Shoto's quirk if he had to, but the heterochromatic teen hadn't expected it to happen so soon. And not in that way. How had the green-haired teen copied one of his father's moves so easily? Focusing the flames to allow for a massive burst of speed that had catapulted him into a lofty lead, leaving Shoto reeling even as Midoriya cleared the second obstacle. He could almost hear his father's rage from here, as he slid across one of the ropes that spanned the space between the large pillars across the chasm, several of his classmates close behind him. He grimaced as he heard Bakugo's explosions catching up, the blonde still soaring through the air as he forced himself forwards. Todoroki clenched his fist, feeling the heat of his flames building under his skin, making it harder for him to focus. A burst of ice, both to block Bakugo as the other teen shot up beside him, and to cool himself down, shot from the ground. Shoto glared at the green-haired teen as he rounded the corner, seeing him carefully picking his way across the minefield. Shoto could still to win. He would win. He had to win. Especially after Midoriya had used his flames. He had to prove that he was better than his father. 𝐒𝐿 grinned as he felt the two figures approach from behind him, both just on the edge of his optimal copy range. He'd purposefully been making his way slowly but steadily across the minefield, knowing that one of them would almost certainly be the one to catch up to him. But having both was just a bonus. He looked around, the total width of the course about 15 meters, meaning that if they wanted to avoid him using their quirks, they would have to go over him. Of course, that would give him all the more time to make it across the minefield. He felt Todoroki's quirk flare, jumping just as the line of ice shot under him, freezing the ground in an attempt to capture him, and disabling the mines at the same time. 𝐒𝐿 smiled as he landed on the frozen ground, shivering as the bare skin of his foot hit the cold surface. He looked back, both Todoroki and Bakugo standing on the edge of the minefield, glaring at him, just out of the range of his quirk. He clenched his fists as he glanced back, mind calculating the best plan for the current scenario. And then he ran. Towards the two startled teens behind him. Sliding to a halt just as they entered his range. He slammed his right foot down, sending a stream of ice right to the entrance of the stadium, swinging his palms back as he built up the sweat on them, his left foot sweeping behind him as a stream of flame shot from his heel. The mines exploded, sending up a wall of pink smoke and a shockwave as he detonated his palms a second later, sliding across the ice like a rocket, his left foot raised. He grinned as he reached the end of the ice trail, leaping forwards into the hallway that led to the finish line. And Midoriya wins. MIC screamed over the speakers, with an amazing showing of his opponent's quirks. I bet they'll be taking notes on how he used them after this. Okay, 𝐒𝐿 liked his lips nervously as he looked at Tokoyami, the bird-headed teen nodding, let's give this a go. What up, hoes? The voice echoed over the area as the shadow creature emerged from 𝐒𝐿's back, human head bald, its dark body tinged green as it bobbed and weaved through the air, mimicking a boxer. I'm 𝐼 all UP. Okay, 𝐒𝐿 hummed, looking up at it as dark shadow popped out of Tokoyami, cheering along with the other shadowy humanoid. So we now know that the personality and appearance are affected by the user. What a mad banquet of darkness, Tokoyami just said. Yeah, but they both look eager to fight, 𝐒𝐿 laughed, you guys also good. He turned to Uraraka and Hatsume as the two girls gave him the thumbs up. Ready to go, first place. Hatsume laughed, man, your quirk is amazing. I'll get to make babies for everything. Great to hear. 𝐒𝐿 grinned as he climbed onto his horse, his dark shadow being sked back into his body as he released the quirk, letting out a stream of expletives as it vanished. Where did it learn all that? Okako mumbled, jumping slightly as 𝐒𝐿 laughed. Probably from me, he said, and I learned from the best. My mom. Your mom. I hear you have quite the interesting quirk, the blonde said behind the other teen, making him jump slightly, turning to look behind him, want to join my team. And why should I do that? Hitoshi growled. I like this one, The blonde laughed to his two other teammates, who eyed Shinso suspiciously. He has spirit. Hey! Same Quirk. Izuku yelled, his hand crackling with explosions as the blonde blocked Bakugo's initial attack with Kirishima's quirk before countering with an explosion of his own. Shut up, Izuku. Two blondes yelled as they continued to fight, their horses jostling for position. Whoop! Izuku shouted as he waved his right arm behind his horse, the small wall of deep blue ice shooting from the ground just in time to deflect the glacier that slammed into it. Careful, Todoroki-san. You could hurt someone. Deku. Bakugo howled as he glared at the rapidly approaching team. Stay the F away from me. Too late. The green-haired teen shouted as he tapped the two girls on the shoulders, Uraraka touching him and Tokoyami at the same time. The jetpack on his back roared to life as their horse rocketed into the air, Bakugo blinking as Todoroki unleashed another massive burst of ice after them. Izuku grinned as he looked back, watching Bakugo and Monoma's horses be forced away from each other as Todoroki's charged up the glacier after him. Releasing Raka's quirk, he called as the two girls felt their gravity return, activating the hover boots on their legs to slow their descent. Let's turn up the heat. The wave of flame shot down towards Todoroki, the teen clenching his teeth as his horse skidded to a stop. He shot out another wall of ice, just barely blocking the torrent of flame. You'll never beat me like that, Sho-chan. Izuku laughed as his horse landed on the ground. Before he looked around, his smirk dropping. They were surrounded, the wall of ice behind them blocking any escape as the three horses charged. I believe the time for chaos has arrived, Tokoyami said quietly, Dark Shadow grinning excitedly, Izuku nodding. Let's give him hell, Punchy. That's his name, you mother effer, the dark creature howled as it shot out of his chest, closely followed by Dark Shadow. I beat the s out of you once I'm done with these chumps. Izuku hissed as the creatures swept through the charging horses, massive fists throwing them to the ground harshly. Dark Shadow darted after Punchy, collecting the fallen horses' headbands as they staggered to their feet. Dude, chill, he shouted at the creature, Punchy just spinning to glare at him. And that's time. Mic shouted, Izuku letting out a sigh of relief as Punchy zoomed towards him. Now I'ma beat you, he howled, Izuku just groaning as he released the quirk, Punchy letting out another stream of expletives as he was quickly sked back into Izuku's body. Okay, note to self, Punchy strong, Punchy angry, Punchy doesn't like me. Good to know. This doesn't make us friends, Shinso growled as he walked away from the 1B students. Of course not. That's more Izuku's wheelhouse than mine, Nito chuckled, making the purple-haired teen stop. So, you know that weirdo? Hitoshi asked. Yes, Nito grinned as he spoke, Hitoshi raising an eyebrow. Not afraid to respond now, he asked, I could brainwash you if you do. It hasn't been 3 minutes since I last touched you, Nito shrugged, before turning away with his friends, so I could do the same to you. I look forward to seeing you in the shadows as a fellow underground hero. Weirdos, Hitoshi grumbled as he walked away, the lot of you. As always, you are far too flashy, the blonde sighed as he finished his lunch, Izuku sticking his tongue out at Monoma as he sat at the table with the 1B student. Whatever, you managed to get through to the final round as well, so why are you complaining? Izuku laughed. I'm not, I just wish you would be a little more subtle, Nito sighed. Really, everything must be a game with you. And everything is a contest with you, Izuku shot back as he shoveled katsudon into his mouth, grinning behind his bowl, though it's not the worst thing. A compliment. From you. Nito laughed in mock shock, how rare. I simply expected more sass. Hey, I compliment people plenty, Izuku muttered as he set down his empty bowl, sass is just more fun. You say that, but is it really true? The blonde chuckled, punching Izuku gently in the arm, blinking when the other teen looked to the side. What's up? Todoroki approaching from our 6, Izuku muttered, wiping his face on a napkin, and getting up. I have a feeling I know what he wants. You go talk to your future boyfriend, then, Nito chuckled, drawing a slight glare from Izuku, before the green-haired teen just smiled. Oh, hey, he suddenly said as they both looked at the approaching dual quirk user. I just had a thought. What happens if we face each other? Simple, Nito shrugged, a grin on his face as he pushed Izuku towards Todoroki. Best man wins. Do you know what a quirk marriage is? Todoroki asked as they stood in the hallway. Yeah. Izuku said, blinking a moment later. Wait, you don't mean? Yes, he bought my mother like livestock, just to breed the perfect successor, Todoroki said as he reached up to the scar on his face. She gave me this scar. She poured boiling water over my face because I looked too much like him. Izuku muttered. And, have you tried to get help? Help? What help? Todoroki growled. No one would believe a word I said against my father. And this isn't about that. Maybe it should be. Shut up. Todoroki growled. I called you here to tell you to stop using those flames. They aren't yours. Well, technically, Izuku hummed, because I replicate quirks, I actually gain the quirk I copy, so they kind of are. I'm sort of just using your quirk as a template to change my own. What? Todoroki said, staring at him. Why are you telling me this? You bared your heart to me. I figured I should let you know something about me. Izuku shrugged, before grinning and pressing his finger to his lips. So yeah, that's how my quirk copies the quirks of others, but don't go telling everyone. It's a secret. What is wrong with you? Todoroki hissed as Izuku walked away. Oh, plenty, the teen called back. Make sure to use your quirk to its fullest when we face each other. Because I sure will. And welcome to the first round of the tournament, loyal listeners. Presentacy shouted over the speakers, let's give our first competitors a big hand. The crowd cheered loudly as the two blondes walked onto the concrete arena, Nito giving Bakugo a sly grin as he stepped onto the stage. Bakugo scowled back, flexing his fingers as he glared. You're that other quirk stealing F. Bakugo growled, making Midnight give him a wary glance. I'm going to kill you. You say that like you mean it, Kaken, Nito laughed, Bakugo's face going red with rage. Don't call me that. Ready? Midnight asked. Begin. Bakugo launched himself towards Monoma immediately, swinging his arms forwards as he did so, releasing a large explosion that both hit the other blonde and kept Bakugo just out of reach. The smoke cleared a moment later, Bakugo scowling as the other teen shimmered in the sunlight, his skin a deep silver color as he charged towards the explosion user. Come here, why don't you? Nito yelled, don't worry, I won't even use your pathetic quirk. Bakugo let out an animalistic scream as he shot forwards again, launching himself at Monoma just as the metal coating vanished. The blonde's hands suddenly expanded as the fist slammed into Bakugo, knocking him from the air. Bakugo grunted as he hit the floor, rolling over quickly as the fist smashed into the ground, cracking the concrete, before leaping like a wild animal at Nito. Bakugo seemed to halt in midair, apparently having crashed into something, before he slammed his fist into it, the sound of shattering glass filling the air as he dropped to the ground. Bakugo leapt towards Nito again, the other blonde ducking under his right hook as though he knew it was coming, placing a sharp jab in the middle of the explosive boy's chest. Is that all you got, freak? Bakugo coughed slightly, stalking forwards. I'm getting tired of this bullshit. Of course you are, Nito sighed, striking a pose as he grinned. So am I. Bakugo grunted as an invisible force slammed into his chest, surprising him for a moment, before a second, harder hit drove him back towards the edge of the arena. A powerful explosion just barely saved him from being flung off the edge, his face twisting into a snarl as he launched himself back towards Monoma, stopping himself just out of grabbing range with another blast that covered the other teen. The same trick won't work twice. Nito shouted, his body shining with metal once again, before Bakugo tackled him to the ground, gasping slightly as his shoulder collided with hard metal. In the stands, Izuku winced as his ex-childhood friend tackled his best friend to the ground, punching him repeatedly in the face with explosive blasts for almost 2 minutes straight. The metal coating eventually faded, Bakugo still laying into Nito even as his knuckles bled, until Midnight was forced to intervene and knock the explosive blonde out with her quirk. Monoma was wheeled off, his face already swelling as MIC announced that Bakugo would be advancing to the next round, the crowd muttering amongst themselves. I can do this, Okiko said to herself as she stood in the waiting room. I can totally do this. You totally can, The voice made her jump as she spun around to see Izuku standing in the door. "I believe in you wholeheartedly." 𝐒𝐭𝐻𝐲 blushed as he smiled at her before taking another step into the room. What's wrong? Did you want something, Midoriya? She blustered, her cheeks reddening as he approached. "Nah, just here to give you some encouragement," Izuku chuckled as he patted her on the shoulder, "and remind you of something. What I said during the entrance exam." "The entrance exam?" 𝐒𝐭𝐻𝐲 asked, her mind immediately going to the image of her sitting on his lap after he'd saved her. She blushed harder as she shook her head vigorously, trying to drive the thought away. Road rash is a hell of a drag. "No." Izuku laughed, before turning away and walking out the room. "The other thing, when I was using your quirk." "When you were using my," 𝐒𝐿𝐻𝐲 hummed, her eyes suddenly going wide. "And 𝐒𝐭𝐻𝐲 wins." MIC called as Tokoyami went sailing out of the ring, landing heavily on the grass as she released her quirk. All she'd had to do was grab a hold of Dark Shadow the moment it charged her, willing her quirk to affect not only the shadowy entity, but everything attached to it. And it had worked. She was able to easily lift the startled 𝐒𝐭𝐴𝐽 into the air, tossing him out of the ring before he could react. Izuku was right. She thought, my quirk really does have good conductivity. Wait, the brunette muttered to herself, her cheeks starting to flush. When did I start calling him Izuku? Kirishima's hardened fist smashed through Tsuburaba's air wall, crashing into the brown-haired boy's face, and sending him skidding out of the ring. Ida lay on his hands and knees as Hatsune walked away from the stage after thanking him for helping her market her inventions. Kaibara was frozen in an instant with a wave of Todoroki's arm, ending the match almost immediately, the gyration user not even able to spin a single finger. Kaminari waved softly from inside the cocoon of tape he was wrapped in, Zero having barely managed to completely wrap him up in the insulative tape before the blonde could release his full charge. Mina walked off the stage in a daze, ♯ smirking slightly to himself as he released her, the girl looking around in confusion. "Hi Yomomo." Izuku waved as they entered the ring, the girl nodding to him as she looked to Midnight, the pro raising her riding CRP. "Ready. Begin." Momo immediately formed a staff in one hand and a shield on the other, watching as Midoriya charged towards her, his own hands glowing as what looked like knuckle dusters emerged from his fingers. The girl raised her shield as he jumped, going for a flying punch that slammed into the metal. Momo cried out in pain as the electric shock shot up her arm, making it go numb as she dropped her shield, flinching when Izuku punched her in the stomach with his other hand, the taser function of the knuckle dusters sending another jolt of electricity through her body. "You're still thinking too basically, Yomo," Izuku said as he waved his hand in front of her face, a fine pink mist spraying in her face. "You need to be more vicious." "What do you mean?" She didn't finish her sentence as she collapsed to the ground, asleep. "Midoriya wins." Midnight shouted as the boy helped place Yorozu onto the stretcher, grinning up at the crowd. "Hey Nito, you all good?" Izuku asked as he walked into the nurse's office after his match. "I came earlier, but you were still unconscious." "Not terrible, all things considered," the blonde yawned, rubbing at the small bandage on his cheek, "though I do wish I'd gotten a few more hits in on the butt." "Mood," Izuku laughed as he pulled up a chair beside his friend's bed. "Quick question, are you wearing lipstick?" Nieto hummed, giving his friend a tired stare. "Yep, slight problem with a pervert, had to teach him a lesson." "Ah, outfit. Seki teacher. I see." The two sat in silence for a moment, just enjoying each other's company, before Nito spoke up. "You're worried about what you're going to do when you have to face him, aren't you?" the blonde asked quietly. "Here." "Oh, no," Izuku chuckled, "I know exactly what I'm going to do. Beat the hell out of him, then let him win." "What?" Nito shouted, making Recovery Girl stick her head out of her small office. "What the hell do you mean let him win?" "Whoa. Think about it Nito," Izuku said as he tried to calm his friend down. "What does Kaken love more than anything?" "Himself," the blonde growled. "No, well, yes, but the other thing," Izuku chuckled, the blonde sighing. "His quirk." "Sort of, but no," Izuku sighed. "What would he hate most if he faced me?" "Hate most? That's easy," losing, Nito trailed off, blinking in revelation. He loves winning. Exactly. But I wonder how he'll feel when he gets beat up, then his opponent surrenders. Izuku grinned. I think it'd be a massive blow to the glass balloon he calls his ego. Oh, Izuku, you are evil, Nito cackled. I love it. Deku. The shout made Izuku roll his eyes before he turned around to smile at the approaching Bakugo, the blonde's face twisted in rage. Izuku glanced down at Bakugo's hands, the knuckles still bloody, the bandages that had been wrapped around them scorched and mostly burned off. You gave them AF plan, didn't you? He shouted, grabbing Izuku by the collar and shaking him. That other copy F and round face, you gave them plans TOF with ME. Who, me? Izuku laughed. Why would I do that? Because you always do. Bakugo growled, you and your freak Quirk are always trying TOF with ME. Why? I don't know, Izuku shrugged, still smiling as he tried to pull away from Bakugo. Maybe because you're a PP. Maybe because you need to learn some humility. Maybe because I just don't like you. F you. Bakugo spat, Izuku letting out a low sigh. You really make it too easy, Kaken, the green-haired teen muttered. And for your information, I didn't give either Nito or Okako any plans. They did that all on their own. Yeah, F right, the blonde spat again. There's no way they could have come up with that silly without you. Or, Kaken, Izuku laughed, are you calling me smart? Because there's no way that you could be calling two people who got into the best hero school in the country dumb. That would be an insult to UA. Shut your F mouth. Bakugo shouted, shaking Izuku again. What the F are you planning, you shitnerd? Izuku just smiled as he kept his mouth closed, veins popping on Bakugo's head as the other teen just looked at him. F answer M, he yelled. Hey, you were the one that said to shut my mouth, so I did. Izuku chuckled as he saw Bakugo's hand begin to twitch, a sly smile making its way onto the green-haired teen's face. What's wrong, Kaken? Aren't you going to try blast me? Or are you worried that the teachers here won't be as forgiving as Aldera? F you, the blonde hissed. They looked the other way when you fed with me as well. Yeah, but I only messed with you because you wanted to hurt me, Izuku replied, his sly smile turning cruel as he leant in towards Bakugo. And let's be honest, I could have done a lot worse than tripping you up every now and again. Oh, the blonde growled, leaning in until their noses were almost touching, like what? The knee met Bakugo's PP with a solid whop, the blonde stiffening as Izuku yanked his collar free. Sorry about that, Kaken, the green-haired teen called as he bolted down the hall, but you really do make it too easy. Omake, Mineta, hey Momo, where are all of the girls? The next round is starting soon. Izuku looked at his phone as it buzzed a moment later, ping an eyebrow at the reply. He scowled for a second, before hitting call and pressing the phone up against his ear. Hey Momo-chan, what do you mean cheerleader outfits? Wait, who told you? Oh, I think I know what's going on. Where are you? Okay, give me a minute to get there. Mineta grinned as he watched the entrance to the field, liking his lips as he waited. It had been surprisingly easy to convince the girls that Aizawa had told them to change into the cheerleader outfits, drool already pooling in his mouth as his eyes started to bulge in anticipation. His phone buzzed a moment later, the teen giving it a half-hearted glance before his eyes nearly bulged out of his head. The text was from Yorozu. Mineta-kun, can you come to the changing rooms? We need you to check the costumes. Mineta blinked, before disappearing in a blur, his feet moving faster than the eye could see as drool dripped down his chin. He arrived outside the girls' changing rooms in record time, slamming the door open as he leapt in. I am here, ladies, he shouted, looking around wildly, before his eyes fell on the girl sitting on one of the benches on the other side of the room. Fishnet stocking clung to her supple legs as she stood, her tall black high heels clicking against the hard floor as she slowly walked towards him. His eyes dragged up, over her wide hips, outlined perfectly by the short miniskirt that clung to her like a second skin, showing just the right amount of thigh, but hiding what was important. A loose silk blouse covered her modest chest. Opened to the third button, revealing her lack of a brother. A pair of half-moon glasses perched on her nose over her freckles, her dark green hair tied back tightly as she lifted a leg and placed it on his shoulder, pushing him easily to his knees. Someone's been a bad boy, Her voice was slightly deeper than he expected, though his brain had already stopped caring as she pushed him to the floor. A very bad boy. Why did you think it was a good idea to try fool those girls? Arble-flabble, Mineta babbled, staring up at the woman, the way her leg was positioned giving a clear view to her black lace panties, and the sizable bulge in the front. Wait. Bulge. Mineta let out a high-pitched scream as he scrambled out from under the person, desperately trying to claw the door open, finding it locked. What's wrong, Mineta-kun? The person said in a husky voice. Don't like my outfit. Who the F are you? He screeched, and why are you so hot? Well, the person blushed slightly, pressing a hand to their lips. How bold. I didn't know you felt that way, especially after what you said to Kirishima. Now, I think Aizawa-sensei has some words for you. Aizawa. Mineta squeaked as the door swung open, revealing the man in question. Mineta, this is your third warning, he sighed, glaring at the short teen. You're expelled. Midoriya, what are you wearing? Momin made it for me, the green-haired boy chuckled, striking a stuck pose. Tell me I'm pretty. Wait. Mineta squeaked. Midoriya. Izuku managed to catch the tail end of Ida and Kirishima's fight, the engine-quirked boy covered in bruises and scrapes as he tried to force the red head out of the arena. Kirishima had dug his hardened fingers into the concrete and was hardening his body each time the other teen got close, which was probably the cause of the blue-haired boy's numerous wounds, particularly on his shins. Hey guys, Izuku called as he sat beside Kaminari, fist-bumping the yellow blonde. I got caught up checking on Nito. What happened in Raka's fight? Oh, the class looked kind of down for a moment, before Gyro explained. Bakugo won, but Uraraka gave him a real run for his money. She floated a ton of debris above him, and tried to drop it on him, but he managed to blast it all away. Demon, sounds like it was pretty close, Izuku hummed. Yeah, though Aizawa-sensei scolded a bunch of the audience for calling Uraraka-chan weak and saying that Bakugo was bullying her. Kero, Tsuyu added, but I don't know about that. Nah, Kaken wouldn't bully a serious opponent, Izuku muttered, pulling out his notebook as he watched the match below. He's got too much pride to do that. How long has this match been going on? About 5 minutes, Kaminari yawned as he stretched. It's getting kind of boring. Ida just keeps trying to kick Kirishima, but Kirishima hardens and blocks it. DMN, Izuku replied, so it's a war of attrition. Wonder who'll give first. Shouldn't you know? Mina asked, can't you feel their quirks? Yeah, but not like that, Izuku sighed, sitting back in his chair. I know where they are, and can sort of tell how they work and when they are being used. But not how much stamina they have left. Oh, the pink-skinned girl replied, before the crowd suddenly gave a cheer, more out of relief than celebration, as Ida fell to the ground, his shins dripping BLD, and conceded, or, poor Ida. At least we get to move on to the next match now. Yeah, Izuku hummed, watching as Ida was helped off the stage by Kirishima, the taller boy staggering on his injured legs. Nice try, the crowd chanted as Todoroki thawed Zero out of the ice, the tape-wielding boy giving a dejected smile. Sup dude? Izuku shouted to Hitoshi as they both walked onto the raised arena. Bad matchup, hey. Seems like UA just wants to screw you over in every way. Bad matchup? Midnight asked, looking at Izuku in confusion. Oh, I know how his quirk works, Izuku explained, which I won't go into here because it would ruin its effectiveness. So nice of you, Shinso sighed sarcastically as Izuku just grinned at him. What, no fancy quips? So, we starting the match? Izuku asked Midnight, the woman raising an eyebrow as he seemed to ignore his opponent. Right, Midnight said, ready. Start. Hitoshi opened his mouth to speak, blinking as Izuku charged straight for him, his body suddenly steaming. Or not, considering the gas was tinged pink, Shinso slapping his hand over his mouth and nose as Izuku bolted towards him. He didn't have time to react as the green-haired teen slammed into him, knocking the air from his lungs with a full-body tackle, forcing him to instinctively take a gasping breath. Hitoshi swore to himself as he felt himself slip into sleep. Bakugo scowled as he peppered Kirishima with large explosions, knocking the hardening quirk user back. His previous fight with Ida had obviously taken its toll on Kirishima because he went down surprisingly quickly, his hardened skin cracking under Bakugo's onslaught. Bakugo wins. Midnight yelled, the blonde glaring up into the stands as he locked eyes with Izuku and Todoroki, sneering at them before stalking off the stage. Izuku hummed as he walked through the hallway, frowning slightly as he felt the powerful Quirk approaching. He muttered as he strolled past the irate-looking Endeavor, pretty basic. What was that brat? The number 2 growled, glaring at Izuku as the teen stopped. Izuku gave a hidden sigh, rolling his eyes as he turned to face the pro. Knowing what he knew, it was probably best to get away from the man as quickly as possible. Didn't mean he couldn't have some fun with him first though. Oh. Sorry, I have a habit of muttering about quirks when I feel them, Izuku stammered, smiling sheepishly as he started to back away. I just meant that you've managed to make a really strong quirk for how basic it is. Basic? The towering man growled, what do you mean basic? Oh, well you can barely control your flames at all, just direct them, really, Izuku mumbled, looking down at the ground as he felt the heat surge. Fighting to keep the slight smile off his face, so it's really impressive how far you've gotten with only the most basic of fire production control quirks. You little brat, the man growled, stepping towards Izuku, I recognize you now. You're the one who can copy quirks. You used my Shoto's quirk in the race. You used my move in the race. Oh. Right, that. Izuku hummed, almost slipping from his act. Actually, Todoroki-san's quirk is much stronger than yours, so I wouldn't really call it your move. It's a lot more powerful. Pity about his trauma. Shoto's quirk is... Endeavor stopped for a moment, a hint of a grin on his face, before he blinked. Wait, trauma. Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. Izuku bit his lip as he bowed, still playing the nervous and overwhelmed teen. Sorry sir, but I have to get to my match. He quickly spun on his heel and walked stiffly away, returning to his usual relaxed gait after rounding a corner. Wow, Izuku muttered to himself, mimicking the pro. My Shoto, my move, but has a bigger ego than Kaken. I wonder if it's as fragile. Izuku shook himself out as he walked onto the field, waving to the crowd as he stepped onto the stage. He looked over at his opponent, the stoic teen simply scowling at him. So, Izuku said as he and Shoto stood opposite each other, you going to use your whole quirk? If I defeat you, Shoto muttered, staring at the ground for a moment before looking up, his eyes burning with determination. When I defeat you, then I'll have proved my point. I don't need his power to be strong. And who says it's his power? Izuku asked, cause your quirk and his feel completely different. Shut up. Shoto growled. No, Izuku retorted, eyes darting to the side as Midnight raised her riding sea. You need to hear this, Todoroki. Shut up, the teen yelled as Midnight dropped her arm, announcing the start of the match, his arm swinging the instant the word ended, unleashing a massive iceberg at the other teen. A high-pitched whistling filled the air as the iceberg slammed into Izuku, steam cascading out of the hole he bored into the side of the wall of ice. A moment later, the front of the iceberg erupted in a spray of shattered ice, steam, and concentrated flame. Izuku stepped out of the hole as though he'd only been mildly inconvenienced, swinging his own right arm at Todoroki. The boy blinked as he heard the telltale tinkling of ice forming, looking down just in time to dodge. The dark blue spikes of ice shot from the frost-covered ground, Izuku walking calmly towards the other teen as he continued to swing his arm lazily back and forth. Like a conductor of an orchestra, he directed the dark blue spikes to erupt from the ground, not giving Shoto enough time to wind up his attacks, the red and white-haired teen barely having the time to erect small walls to block the icicles. Shoto, the shout echoed over the stadium, making both teens pause, Izuku to sigh and Todoroki to flinch. Stop playing around and defeat that fraud. Ignore him, Izuku called out as Todoroki dodged another blast of dark blue ice. He's not worth it. Trust me on that. How do you know? Because you can control your flames way better than he could ever hope to, Izuku hummed, holding up his left arm as the ball of flame swirled in his palm, tightening as it began to glow white-hot, enough to do stuff like this, which is way more than that flaming dumpster can do. What? Todoroki blinked, but how? How do you control your ice? Izuku shrugged. It works the same way, but opposite, if that makes any sense. I can control my ice. Jeebus Christmas. Izuku shouted as he turned away, shaking his head in disbelief. What has that idiot been teaching you? Big attack make bad guy go bye-bye. Is that it? 'Cause that's some caveman logic right there. Cavemen, what are you talking about? Todoroki asked, staring at the other teen in shock. I am using your quirk, Todoroki. Izuku gave a frustrated sigh as he turned back to the other teen. Your quirk, not his. He can just barely control his flames. Do you understand what that means? No. The greater control had to come from somewhere, Izuku said softly, his tone suddenly becoming more measured and kinder. It's too strong to just be a natural evolution, so you must have gotten it from someone. If it wasn't your father, then it could only be from your mother, the other teen finished, staring at Izuku as memories rushed through his head. A moment later, the flames erupted from his left side, sublimating the ice that had gathered on his right as he gave Izuku a wide, slightly mad grin. Thank you, Midoriya. You reminded me of something important that I had forgotten. Good to hear, Izuku laughed, though I have to ask, you learn about sublimation yet? Sublimat dash. Shoto was cut off as Izuku swung his hands forwards, white-hot flames around his left hand as dark ice built up on his right. There was a burst of steam as the two met, spraying straight into Shoto's face as he staggered back, gasping as the kick landed squarely on his chest. He staggered back some more, preparing to counterattack when Midnight yelled. Shoto Todoroki has stepped out of bounds. Izuku Midoriya wins. What? The red and white-haired teen muttered as he looked down at his foot, staring at his heel that was over the red line that circled the arena. Good fight. Izuku laughed as he shook the last of the ice off his right hand, holding it out to Todoroki. I look forward to our next match. Especially now that you're going to start using your fire. Why? Todoroki asked, staring at the other teen. Because, Izuku shrugged, you looked like you needed saving. Shoto stood, stunned by the words as the other teen waved to the crowd some more, before walking off his side of the arena. Shoto started as Midnight asked him to leave the field so they could prepare it for the next fight, the teen nodding as he stumbled away, still in shock at what had just happened. Bakugo kicked the door to the waiting room open, muttering to himself as he stalked inside. That If Deku, the blonde muttered, thinks his thing better than me, does he? I'll show him. I'm right here, you know, Izuku hummed from the table in the center of the room, making Bakugo jump. What the F are you doing in my waiting room, you shitnerd? Bakugo yelled. Actually, you're in mine, Izuku replied, pointing to the still open door. Katsuki checked the number, his eyes going slightly wide as he saw that Izuku was right. F you. That joke is old now, Kaken, Izuku sighed, you need new material. Go to hell. That's better, the other teen said as he smiled, then I'll say, been there, done that, couldn't find the t-shirt stand. It'll be perfect. F you, Bakugo cut himself off as he glared at the other teen. What the F are you planning? Trying to throw me off or something? Nope, just messing with you, Izuku said as he got up from his seat. Now, if you'd be so kind as to leave, I'd prefer my rest time to actually be restful. F that, the blonde snarled, I know you. You're planning something. You better not use my quirk. Fine, I won't, Izuku shrugged, startling Bakugo with his attitude. Or the DMNX Beach's quirk, he growled, you used it on high class and the purple F, but you won't on me. Okay, Izuku replied, smiling calmly at Bakugo. In fact, you know what? I won't use any quirks. I'll fight you quirkless. You'll F what? Fight you quirkless, Izuku repeated. I was already planning on letting you win, so I might as well fight you quirkless as well. It'll be good practice if nothing else. Quirkless. Practice. Bakugo hissed, drawing his arm back to punch, letting me win. You're F looking down on Deku. Yeah, the words caught Bakugo off guard, stopping him mid-swing as he stepped towards the other teen. I'm looking down on you, because because I know that deep down, below all that bravado and shouting, you're just a coward. I am not AF coward. Then prove it, Izuku said, shoving the blonde off him. You know how. F you, the blonde growled, spinning on his heel, storming out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Izuku just gave a short sigh, before smiling to himself. In the hall, Bakugo stared at the wall, breathing heavily as he clenched and unclenched his fists. I'll show you, Deku, the blonde hissed. You want to fight Quirkless? I'll show you fighting Quirkless.